In this video, we're going to be exploring 3 hours of forgotten South Park lore to fall asleep to. Let's get started with the origins hiding beneath the crude animation. First up, we got where South Park actually came from. Two college kids making a Christmas card that accidentally created television history. The most controversial animated series in television began with two film students who bonded over their shared sense of humor and a mutual love for Monty Python. Trey Parker and Matt Stone's journey from the University of Colorado Boulder to Comedy Central started in 1992. But the path to South Park was anything but straightforward. The show that would eventually redefine animated satire began as a series of increasingly ambitious student films, construction paper cutouts, and one particularly offensive Christmas card that ended up in the hands of Hollywood's biggest stars. Parker and Stone met during their time at CU Boulder's film program, where both were studying to become filmmakers. Parker had already demonstrated his musical theater talents and absurdist comedy sensibilities through various projects. Stone brought a sharp satiric edge and business instincts that would later prove essential to their partnership. The two quickly discovered they shared a similar comedic wavelength, one that other students and professors didn't always appreciate. Their early collaborations tested boundaries and pushed against what they considered the pretentiousness of film school culture. Their first major project together was Cannibal, the musical, a bizarre comedy about the real-life Alfred Packer, a Colorado prospector accused of cannibalism in the 1870s. Parker wrote, directed, and starred in the film, while Stone helped produce and appeared in a supporting role. The musical featured original songs with titles like Spadewinkle and That's All I'm Asking For, establishing Parker's talent for creating catchy melodies with deliberately ridiculous lyrics. Shot on a tiny budget in the mountains near Boulder, the film demonstrated the duo's willingness to commit completely to absurd premises. While Cannibal, the musical didn't achieve commercial success during its initial release, it showed that Parker and Stone could execute ambitious projects with limited resources. The first iteration of what would become South Park emerged in 1992 when Parker created a short animated film for his animation class. This original project was titled The Spirit of Christmas, though it would later be distinguished as Jesus vs. Frosty to differentiate it from the later version. The short featured four boys who resembled the eventual South Park characters, though their designs were cruder and their personalities less defined. In this version, an evil Frosty the Snowman comes to life and starts killing people, leading the boys to seek help from baby Jesus. The animation was created through construction paper cutouts that Parker photographed frame by frame, a painstaking process that resulted in intentionally crude but oddly charming visuals. The Jesus vs. Frosty short was offensive, violent, and completely unlike anything Parker's professors had seen in an animation class. One of the four boys dies when Frosty throws his hat like a ninja star, decapitating him. Another boy's head explodes. Baby Jesus defeats Frosty through divine intervention, but the short's tone mixed sincere Christmas sentiment with extreme violence in ways that confused and disturbed viewers. Parker received a low grade on the project, but the short began circulating among students who appreciated its boundary-pushing humor. This early rejection from authority figures would become a pattern that Parker and Stone learned to embrace rather than fight against. After graduation, Parker and Stone moved to Los Angeles to pursue careers in entertainment. They struggled to find work that matched their ambitions, taking various odd jobs while trying to break into the industry. During this period, they continued developing projects together, though nothing was gaining traction with studios or networks. Their big break came not through traditional Hollywood channels, but through a chance connection with a Fox Broadcasting Company executive named Brian Graydon. Graydon had seen the original Jesus vs. Frosty short and was impressed by its unique style and transgressive humor. In 1995, he approached Parker and Stone with an unusual commission. Graydon wanted a video Christmas card to send to friends and colleagues in the entertainment industry, and he was willing to pay the duo to create it. The budget was modest, just a few $1,000s, but it gave Parker and Stone complete creative freedom to make whatever they wanted. They decided to create a new version of The Spirit of Christmas, this time featuring a more developed story, and characters that more closely resembled what would become South Park. This second Spirit of Christmas short, later known as Jesus vs. Santa, featured 4 boys named Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny. Their character designs were refined from the earlier version, with each boy having a distinct personality and appearance. Kyle wore a green hat, Stan wore a blue hat with a red pom-pom, Cartman was fat and wore a yellow hat, and Kenny wore an orange parka that covered his entire face. The plot involved Jesus Christ and Santa Claus fighting each other over who the Christmas season should celebrate. The boys initially support Santa, but when Santa starts killing people, they realize they need to find a solution that restores peace. The animation quality improved slightly from Jesus vs. Frosty, though the construction paper aesthetic remained deliberately crude. Parker provided most of the voices, creating the high-pitched, childlike sounds for the boys, along with deeper voices for Jesus and Santa. The short featured the first appearance of Kenny's muffled dialogue, as his parka-covered mouth made his speech incomprehensible. Kenny also died in this version, killed during the fight between Jesus and Santa, establishing what would become one of South Park's most famous running gags. What happened next changed everything. Brian Graydon sent the video Christmas card to approximately 40 friends and colleagues in Hollywood during the 1995 holiday season. The recipients made copies and sent them to their own friends. Those friends made more copies. Within weeks, the Spirit of Christmas short was circulating throughout the entertainment industry on VHS tapes. Executives, actors, producers, and agents were all talking about this offensive, hilarious, animated Christmas fight between Jesus and Santa. George Clooney, who was then starring in the medical drama ER, received a copy of the tape and became one of its biggest champions. He made copies and distributed them to friends, significantly expanding the short's reach beyond the initial Hollywood circle. Other celebrities began requesting copies, and the tape became one of the hottest pieces of underground entertainment in Los Angeles. This was years before YouTube or viral internet videos existed, making the tapes spread through physical copying all the more remarkable. The Spirit of Christmas became one of the first viral videos in history, though the term viral video didn't exist yet. The short eventually made its way onto the early internet, where it was shared through file sharing services and email attachments, despite the large file sizes and slow download speeds of mid-1990s internet connections. People would wait hours for the file to download, then show it to friends who would want their own copies. The crude animation and extreme content that had initially seemed like liabilities became assets, as the short's offensive nature made it feel like forbidden fruit that needed to be shared. Comedy Central executive Doug Herzog saw the Spirit of Christmas short and immediately recognized its potential as a television series. Herzog had been working to develop Comedy Central's original programming, beyond stand-up comedy specials and licensed sitcom reruns. He reached out to Parker and Stone about turning their animated short into a weekly series. The duo were initially skeptical, having experienced various false starts and disappointments in their attempts to break into Hollywood. However, Herzog's offer was genuine, and Comedy Central was willing to give them significant creative control over the project. Development of the South Park series began in 1996. Parker and Stone needed to expand their 5-minute short into a sustainable series format that could produce 13 episodes in its first season. They developed the town of South Park, Colorado as the setting, basing it loosely on Parker's childhood hometown of Fairplay, Colorado. The 4 boys became more fully realized characters with distinct personalities, families, and relationships. Stan was positioned as the everyman protagonist, Kyle as his Jewish best friend, Cartman as Worf, the racist, selfish antagonist, and Kenny as the poor kid who dies in every episode. The pilot episode, titled Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, established the show's basic formula and tone. The story involved Cartman being abducted by aliens who perform experiments on him, while the other boys try to convince adults that an alien invasion is happening. The episode introduced Chef, the school cafeteria worker, voiced by soul singer Isaac Hayes, who would become a beloved character until Hayes' controversial departure years later. It also established the show's willingness to tackle taboo subjects, as the plot explicitly referenced anal probing and featured crude jokes about bodily functions. The production schedule for South Park became one of its defining characteristics, though this wasn't initially intentional. Parker and Stone created the pilot episode using the same construction paper cutout technique they'd used for the Christmas shorts, photographing each frame individually. The process was incredibly time-consuming, requiring weeks of work for a single episode. They quickly realized this method wouldn't be sustainable for producing a weekly series. After completing the pilot, they made a crucial decision that would shape the show's entire approach to animation. The solution came through computer animation software, specifically Maya, which was becoming more accessible to independent animators in the late 1990s. Parker and Stone worked with animation studios to develop a process that replicated the look of construction paper cutouts while using computer animation for the actual production. The characters were designed in Maya to look exactly like construction paper, complete with visible construction paper texture and the slightly rough edges of hand-cut shapes. This technique allowed them to animate much faster while maintaining the deliberately crude aesthetic that had made the Christmas shorts distinctive. However, even with computer animation, South Park's production schedule remained incredibly tight. The show adopted a 6-day production cycle that began on Wednesday and ended with a completed episode airing the following Tuesday. This breakneck pace was partly born of necessity, as Parker and Stone were learning television production on the fly, but it became a strategic advantage. The quick turnaround meant South Park could respond to current events and pop culture phenomena faster than any other show on television. Episodes could reference news stories from the same week they aired, giving South Park a topical relevance that other animated series couldn't match. South Park premiered on Comedy Central on the 13th of August 1997. The first episode, Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, attracted immediate attention and controversy. Parents groups condemned the show for its crude humor, profanity, and inappropriate content aimed at what they perceived as a children's cartoon. The controversy generated massive publicity, and viewership numbers grew rapidly. Comedy Central had a genuine hit on its hands, though the network wasn't entirely prepared for the cultural phenomenon South Park would become. The early success created challenges alongside opportunities. Parker and Stone were suddenly responsible for producing 13 episodes in rapid succession, all while learning how television production worked. The 6-day schedule left no room for error or second-guessing. Scripts needed to be finalized quickly, voice recording sessions were compressed into single days, and animation work continued right up until broadcast. This intense pressure forged the working relationship between Parker and Stone, establishing creative habits and decision-making processes that would sustain them through decades of collaboration. The construction paper aesthetic that had started as a practical choice in film school became South Park's visual signature. While other animated shows pursued more detailed, technically impressive animation styles, South Park embraced its crude simplicity. The characters' limited movements and basic designs made them instantly recognizable and easy to parody. The animation style also reinforced the show's outsider status, positioning it as different from the polished professionalism of network television. What could have been seen as technical limitations instead became deliberate artistic choices that set South Park apart from everything else on television. By the end of its first season, South Park had become Comedy Central's highest-rated show, and a genuine cultural phenomenon. The characters appeared on merchandise, in video games, and in countless parodies and references across other media. Parker and Stone had gone from unemployed film school graduates to the creators of one of television's most talked-about shows in just a few years. Their willingness to push boundaries, combined with their fortunate timing in catching the early viral video wave, had created something unprecedented in animation. South Park started when film students Trey Parker and Matt Stone met at the University of Colorado Boulder in 1992 and created Cannibal, the musical, together. Parker made The Spirit of Christmas short in 1992 for animation class featuring 4 boys and an evil Frosty the Snowman. In 1995, Fox executive Brian Graydon commissioned a second Spirit of Christmas as a video Christmas card, this time featuring Jesus fighting Santa. George Clooney helped spread the VHS tape throughout Hollywood, making it one of the first viral videos in history. Comedy Central's Doug Herzog saw the short and offered Parker and Stone a series deal in 1996. The pilot episode, Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, required construction paper animation, but the duo quickly switched to Maya computer animation that replicated the construction paper look. This allowed them to maintain a 6-day production schedule, finishing episodes just before they aired. South Park premiered on the 13th of August 1997 and became an immediate hit despite controversy. The crude animation style born from film school necessity became the show's signature look, while the quick production turnaround became its competitive advantage for topical satire. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Mapping the Town, Addresses, Landmarks, and the Impossible Geography of the Colorado Rockies. Moving on to Mapping the Town, Addresses, Landmarks, and the Impossible Geography of the Colorado Rockies. Understanding South Park means knowing the specific addresses, impossible locations, and contradictory geography that make this Colorado mountain town feel both real and completely fictional. The creators didn't just invent random locations for episodes, they built a comprehensive world with actual street addresses, detailed business districts, and a town layout that somehow contains everything from international airports to exclusive ski resorts, all supposedly within a community of roughly 4,000 residents. The geography makes no logical sense. Distances change based on narrative convenience, and buildings appear and disappear without explanation. Yet this flexibility allows South Park to function as whatever kind of setting each episode requires. The most famous address in the entire series belongs to Stan Marsh, who lives at 2001 Bonanza Street. This address has appeared consistently across multiple episodes, establishing Stan's house as one of the few geographically stable locations in town. The Marsh residence sits in a typical suburban neighborhood with similar houses lining both sides of the street. Stan shares the home with his father, Randy, his mother, Sharon, and his older sister, Shelley. The house features a distinctive green exterior with a peaked roof, making it instantly recognizable in establishing shots. Inside, the layout includes a kitchen where the family gathers, a living room with Randy's favorite chair, and upstairs bedrooms that have hosted countless sleepovers and secret conversations between Stan and Kyle. Kyle Broflovsky's house doesn't have as consistent an address across episodes, though it's clearly located in the same neighborhood as Stan's home. The two boys live close enough to walk to each other's houses regularly, and many episodes show them meeting between their homes before heading to the bus stop. Kyle's house is distinguished by its red brick exterior and the mezuzah on the door frame, marking it as the Broflovsky family's Jewish household. The interior features a formal dining room where the family celebrates holidays, and Kyle's room often serves as the location for serious conversations between the four main boys when they need privacy from adults. Eric Cartman's house occupies a peculiar place in South Park's geography. The show consistently portrays Cartman as living on the poor side of town, yet the location of this poor area changes based on what each episode requires. Sometimes Cartman's neighborhood appears run down with trailer homes and shabby buildings. Other times, it looks identical to Stan and Kyle's middle-class suburban streets. The inconsistency reflects how South Park treats poverty as both a real socioeconomic condition and a flexible plot device. Cartman lives alone with his mother, Leanne, in a modest house that's become infamous for the various inappropriate activities that occur there. The basement has featured in numerous episodes as the location for Cartman's schemes, while his bedroom contains his disturbing collection of dolls and stuffed animals that he treats as real companions. Kenny McCormick's house provides the most consistent visual representation of poverty in South Park. The McCormick residence is unmistakably run down, with peeling paint, broken windows, and a general atmosphere of neglect. The house sits in a neighborhood that actually looks poor, with similar dilapidated buildings nearby, and an overall sense of economic depression. Inside, the home features cramped rooms, with minimal furniture, and a pervasive sense that the McCormick family struggles financially. Kenny shares his bedroom with his younger sister Karen, and the house lacks many basic amenities that the other boys take for granted. This geographic isolation mirrors Kenny's social isolation, as his house is shown to be farther from the main neighborhood where Stan, Kyle, and Cartman live. South Park Elementary serves as the central gathering location for most episodes, yet its geographic placement shifts based on narrative needs. Some episodes show the school within walking distance of the boys' homes, while others depict it as requiring a bus ride through various parts of town. The school building itself maintains consistent visual elements, including the distinctive entrance with its sign and flagpole, but the surrounding landscape changes regularly. The parking lot, playground, and nearby buildings appear and disappear based on what each episode requires. The bus stop has become South Park's most iconic location, despite being nothing more than a simple sign marking where school buses pick up children. This ordinary spot functions as the boys' primary meeting place, where episodes often begin with the four main characters gathering before school. The bus stop's location relative to other landmarks shifts constantly. Sometimes it's shown at the end of the boys' street, other times it appears to be in a commercial area, and occasionally it's depicted as being near the edge of town. This geographic flexibility allows the bus stop to serve as a narrative anchor point while remaining adaptable to different story needs. Stark's Pond represents one of the few consistently placed natural landmarks in South Park. The pond sits at the edge of town, surrounded by forest and mountains, providing a location where characters can have private conversations away from adults and crowds. The pond has hosted everything from romantic encounters to suicide attempts to alien landings, making it one of the most versatile locations in the series. Its distance from the main town changes based on whether the story needs it to be a quick walk or a significant journey, but the pond itself remains visually consistent with its distinctive trees and mountain backdrop. Downtown South Park contains the highest concentration of businesses and services in town, though the specific shops and their locations evolve constantly across episodes. The main street features various stores, including Tom's Rhinoplasty, the movie theater, multiple bars and restaurants, and whatever specialty shops each episode requires. The layout of downtown changes so frequently that attempting to map it would be futile, yet certain landmarks recur often enough to create a sense of place. The movie theater has appeared in numerous episodes as the location where the boys watch films that inevitably influence their behavior. Various restaurants serve as meeting places for adults, though their names and specialties change based on plot needs. Casa Bonita deserves special attention as one of South Park's most beloved locations, despite representing a massive geographic impossibility. The restaurant is treated as a local South Park establishment that the boys can visit for special occasions. In reality, Casa Bonita is a real restaurant located in Lakewood, Colorado, a suburb of Denver approximately 80 miles from the South Park Basin. The show treats this 160-mile round trip as a casual dining destination, demonstrating how South Park's geography prioritizes narrative convenience over physical accuracy. The restaurant itself is portrayed faithfully, featuring the cliff divers, cave explorers, and Black Bart's cave that made the real Casa Bonita famous. Trey Parker's childhood love for Casa Bonita shines through in these episodes, and his affection for the location ultimately led to him and Matt Stone purchasing the actual restaurant in 2021 after it fell into bankruptcy. The town's commercial infrastructure reveals even more geographic impossibilities. South Park somehow contains a fully functional airport despite being a mountain town of 4,000 residents. The airport appears whenever the story requires international travel, complete with security checkpoints, multiple gates, and direct flights to destinations around the world. Real mountain towns of this size might have tiny regional airports with a handful of flights per day to major hubs, but South Park's airport functions like a major metropolitan facility. The presence of this airport highlights how the show treats geography as infinitely flexible, expanding or contracting based on narrative requirements. Multiple shopping centers, malls, and entertainment venues populate South Park, despite the town's small size. The boys regularly visit movie theaters, bowling alleys, arcades, and shopping malls that would require a much larger population base to sustain. The mall, where the boys shop, contains multiple floors, dozens of stores, and all the amenities of a major urban shopping center. These locations appear and disappear based on episode needs, never creating continuity problems because The show doesn't pretend to maintain geographic consistency. The relationship between South Park and Denver creates constant geographic confusion. Some episodes treat Denver as a distant major city, requiring significant travel time to reach. Other episodes depict Denver as immediately adjacent to South Park, with characters traveling there casually for errands or entertainment. The actual distance from Fairplay, Colorado, the real-world South Park Basin, to Denver is approximately 85 miles, a drive of roughly 90 minutes through mountain passes. This distance should make Denver an occasional destination for special trips, not a casual suburb where characters can pop over for quick visits. However, South Park treats Denver's proximity as whatever each story requires, sometimes making it a major journey, and other times treating it as the next town over. The real South Park exists as a genuine geographic feature in central Colorado. South Park Basin is a high mountain valley located in Park County, with the small town of Fairplay serving as its largest community. Trey Parker grew up in this area, drawing inspiration from the landscape, local businesses, and small-town culture he experienced there. The real South Park Basin sits at an elevation of approximately 10,000 feet, surrounded by the Rocky Mountains on all sides. The area's harsh winters, remote location, and sparse population influenced many aspects of the show's setting and atmosphere. Fairplay, Colorado serves as the primary real-world analog for the fictional South Park. The town has a population of around 700 permanent residents, making it significantly smaller than the show's stated population of 4,000. Fairplay embraces its connection to the series, with tourists visiting to see the real locations that inspired Parker's creation. The town features many of the same geographic elements shown in the series, including mountain vistas, a small downtown area, and the sense of isolation that comes from living in a remote mountain community. However, Fairplay lacks most of the businesses, services, and infrastructure shown in the animated version, as real small mountain towns struggle to sustain even basic amenities. The mountains surrounding South Park change size and proximity based on what each episode needs visually. Sometimes the peaks loom close and threatening, creating a sense of isolation and claustrophobia. Other times they're distant backdrop elements that suggest the town exists in a wide valley with plenty of space. This flexible geography extends to skiing facilities, with South Park apparently having immediate access to world-class ski resorts, despite such facilities typically being located in specific mountain areas with appropriate terrain and snow conditions. The boys regularly visit ski lodges, hit the slopes, and encounter ski culture without any sense that they're traveling to a different location. What makes South Park's geographic approach significant is how it represents a deliberate creative choice rather than sloppy world building. Parker and Stone understand that maintaining strict geographic consistency would limit their storytelling options. By treating the town's layout and infrastructure as infinitely flexible, they can tell any kind of story without worrying about whether the required locations or distances make sense. This approach reflects how South Park functions as satire rather than realistic fiction. The show needs to comment on airports, malls, restaurants, and other aspects of modern American life, so it simply provides those facilities whenever required. The geographic impossibilities also serve a satirical purpose by suggesting that every American town, regardless of size, has been homogenized into containing the same commercial infrastructure. The presence of chain restaurants, big box stores, and standardized entertainment venues in a town of 4,000 people comments on how corporate America has eliminated genuine regional differences. South Park's impossible geography makes it a microcosm of all American towns simultaneously, allowing the show to satirize broad cultural phenomena through a specific setting. South Park's detailed but impossible geography centers on a few stable addresses like Stan's home at 2001 Bonanza Street, while treating most locations as flexible narrative tools. The town supposedly has 4,000 residents but contains infrastructure requiring populations 10 times larger, including a major airport, multiple malls, and countless entertainment venues. Casa Bonita, actually located 80 miles away in Denver, is treated as a local restaurant. The relationship between South Park and Denver shifts from immediate adjacency to distant separation based on episode needs. The real South Park Basin exists in central Colorado near Fairplay, a town of 700 people that inspired Trey Parker's creation but lacks most of the show's depicted infrastructure. Mountains change size and proximity, the downtown area constantly reconfigures itself, and entire neighborhoods appear or disappear without explanation. This geographic flexibility represents a deliberate creative choice, allowing Parker and Stone to tell any story without location constraints. The impossible geography also serves satirical purposes, suggesting every American town has been homogenized into the same commercial infrastructure, regardless of actual population or need. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Divine Intervention, Jesus vs. Satan and the weirdest religious rivalry on television. The complete history of Jesus Christ and Satan as recurring South Park characters reveals one of the show's most surprising elements. These ultimate representations of good and evil appear not as cosmic abstractions, but as surprisingly relatable figures dealing with everyday problems. From their first boxing match in the Spirit of Christmas short through their evolving relationship across decades, Jesus and Satan demonstrate how South Park approaches religious satire by humanizing divine figures rather than simply mocking faith. The original Christmas fight established South Park's willingness to treat religious figures as characters rather than untouchable symbols. In the 1995 Spirit of Christmas short that launched the series, Jesus Christ and Santa Claus engage in physical combat over who deserves credit for the Christmas holiday. The fight plays out like a martial arts movie, with both figures demonstrating supernatural fighting abilities. Jesus uses his divine powers, while Santa employs Christmas magic, creating an absurd yet oddly respectful conflict between two beloved holiday figures. The boys initially side with Santa, viewing Christmas as primarily about presents and secular celebration. When Santa's violence escalates, they realize the fight has gone too far and seek a peaceful resolution. The short's resolution came through an unexpected source. Brian Boitano, the Olympic figure skater, appears as the voice of reason who helps the boys understand that Christmas should celebrate both religious and secular elements. This absurd solution, having a real-life athlete mediate a fight between Jesus and Santa, established South Park's approach to religious satire. The show would treat sacred figures as real characters while acknowledging the absurdity of taking religious mythology too literally. The original fight also demonstrated that Parker and Stone weren't simply atheists mocking faith, but rather satirists exploring how religious and secular culture intersect and conflict in modern America. Jesus Christ became a recurring character in the series proper, living in South Park as a regular resident rather than a distant divine figure. His characterization evolved into something genuinely unique in television history. This Jesus hosts a public access television show called Jesus and Pals, where he takes phone calls from viewers and offers advice on various topics. The show within a show format allows South Park to explore how Jesus might navigate modern media culture, presenting him as earnest and well-meaning, but struggling with low ratings and limited viewership. His public access show never attracts much attention, suggesting that even Jesus can't compete with modern entertainment options. Beyond his media career, Jesus works as a carpenter in South Park, maintaining his traditional profession while living among the townspeople. He's portrayed as genuinely kind and helpful, willing to use his divine powers to assist people in need. However, his miracles often go unappreciated or create unexpected complications. In various episodes, Jesus performs resurrections, heals the sick, and demonstrates other divine abilities, yet the townspeople treat these miracles as unremarkable occurrences. This casual acceptance of the supernatural highlights how South Park's universe operates under different rules than reality, where divine intervention happens regularly but means less than it would in our world. Jesus' personality combines genuine divinity with very human insecurities. He struggles with self-doubt, worries about his relevance in modern society, and sometimes makes questionable decisions despite his divine wisdom. This characterization makes him sympathetic rather than simply a target for mockery. The show presents Jesus as trying his best to live up to his role as the Son of God while dealing with the mundane frustrations of existence in a small Colorado town. His earnest attempts to help people and spread his message often fail, not because he's incompetent, but because modern society isn't particularly interested in divine guidance. Satan's character arc represents one of South Park's most ambitious and successful long-term character developments. The ultimate embodiment of evil evolved from a straightforward villain into one of the show's most sympathetic and emotionally complex figures. This transformation happened gradually across numerous episodes and multiple seasons, demonstrating how South Park could develop characters beyond their initial satirical purposes. Satan first appeared as a traditional antagonist, representing evil and temptation in various storylines. His visual design combined traditional demonic imagery with a surprisingly buff physique, making him simultaneously threatening and ridiculous. However, the show quickly moved beyond simple portrayals of Satan as pure evil. Episodes began exploring his personal life, relationships, and emotional struggles, revealing unexpected depth beneath the demonic exterior. The relationship between Satan and Saddam Hussein became one of South Park's most memorable recurring storylines. The pairing of the devil with the real-world Iraqi dictator created a relationship that was simultaneously absurd and oddly touching. Saddam, portrayed as a manipulative, sexually aggressive partner, repeatedly takes advantage of Satan's emotional vulnerability. Despite being the Lord of Hell, with immense supernatural power, Satan finds himself in an abusive relationship where he can't stand up to his human boyfriend. The dynamic provided genuine commentary on unhealthy relationships while maintaining South Park's signature absurdist humor. Satan's struggles with self-esteem and personal identity developed across multiple episodes. He attends therapy sessions where he discusses his relationship problems, his difficult relationship with his Father God, and his general dissatisfaction with being the embodiment of evil. These therapy scenes play remarkably straight, with Satan expressing genuine emotional pain and seeking real psychological help for his issues. The show treats his mental health struggles with surprising sincerity, creating moments that are simultaneously funny and genuinely affecting. The character's evolution culminated in episodes where Satan makes active attempts to improve himself and break free from destructive patterns. He tries to end his relationship with Saddam multiple times, struggles with the decision, and eventually finds the strength to prioritize his own well-being. When he finally defeats Saddam and sends him away, it represents genuine character growth rather than a simple joke payoff. Satan's journey from villain to sympathetic figure demonstrates how South Park uses satire to explore real human experiences through fantastical characters. Satan's eventual death in later seasons provided a surprisingly emotional conclusion to his character arc. After years of development, the show chose to kill off Satan in a way that acknowledged his growth and the audience's attachment to him. His death wasn't played purely for laughs, but treated as a significant loss for the show's universe. This willingness to develop and then conclude a character's story shows the depth that South Park achieved despite its reputation as merely crude satire. The broader theological implications of Jesus and Satan's presence in South Park extend beyond individual character development. Their existence confirms that the show's universe contains genuine supernatural elements and that Christian mythology is literally true within the show's reality. God exists as an actual entity, heaven and hell are real places, and the cosmic battle between good and evil plays out through these characters. However, this validation of Christian theology doesn't prevent the show from satirizing religious institutions, hypocritical believers, or the contradictions within faith traditions. The Super Best Friends episode demonstrated how South Park extended its religious satire beyond Christianity. The episode featured a superhero team composed of religious figures from various faiths, including Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Krishna, Joseph Smith, and others. Each figure possessed powers based on their religious mythology, creating an Avengers-style team that protected the world from threats. The episode acknowledged the significance of different faith traditions, while poking fun at the idea that religious figures would need to team up like comic book superheroes. The inclusion of Muhammad in the Super Best Friends episode, which aired in 2001, initially generated little controversy. The prophet was portrayed respectfully, with his traditional prohibition on visual representation handled through a simple character design rather than elaborate mockery. However, after the 2005 Danish cartoon controversy surrounding images of Muhammad, Comedy Central refused to re-air the episode and later removed it from streaming services. This decision highlighted how the same content could be acceptable in one cultural moment but become controversial in another, demonstrating the shifting nature of acceptable religious satire. The Mormon episode All About Mormons showcased South Park's ability to satirize religious beliefs while respecting believers themselves. The episode presents Mormon theology through a musical sequence labeled "This is What Mormons Actually Believe," depicting the religion's origin story with all its unusual elements intact. However, the Mormon family at the center of the episode is portrayed as genuinely kind, happy, and morally upright. The father's final speech defends his faith by pointing out that Mormon beliefs make him and his family happy, moral, and connected, asking what's wrong with that even if others find the theology ridiculous. This balance between satirizing belief systems and respecting believers demonstrates South Park's more nuanced approach to religious commentary. The Do the Handicapped Go to Hell two-part episode explored theological questions about salvation with unexpected seriousness. The storyline followed the boys attending Sunday school and learning that unbaptized people go to hell, leading them to worry about Kenny's fate. The episodes presented various theological positions, from strict fundamentalism to more liberal interpretations, while exploring the psychological impact of teaching children about eternal damnation. The story treated these questions as genuinely important, rather than simply mocking religious education, showing how South Park could engage with theological debates while maintaining its satirical edge. Jesus and Satan's presence in South Park created opportunities for the show to explore how divine figures might navigate modern secular culture. Both characters struggle with relevance in a world more interested in entertainment and material concerns than spiritual matters. Jesus can't get people to watch his public access show despite being the literal Son of God. Satan deals with relationship drama and therapy appointments like any other troubled individual. These characterizations suggest that even divine beings face the challenges of modern existence, unable to simply impose their will on a culture that has moved beyond traditional religious frameworks. The treatment of religious figures in South Park walks a delicate line between reverence and mockery. The show never denies the existence or importance of these figures, treating them as genuinely powerful and significant within the show's universe. However, it also refuses to treat them as beyond satire or criticism, portraying them as characters who can be funny, flawed, and relatable. This approach differs from purely atheistic satire that dismisses religion entirely or purely blasphemous content that mocks faith without engaging with it seriously. South Park occupies a middle ground where religious belief is taken seriously enough to be worth satirizing thoughtfully. Jesus Christ and Satan originated in the 1995 Spirit of Christmas short fighting over Christmas credit, with Brian Boitano mediating their resolution. Jesus became a South Park resident hosting the public access show Jesus and Pals while working as a carpenter, performing miracles that townspeople treat as unremarkable. Satan evolved from simple villain into one of the show's most sympathetic characters through his abusive relationship with Saddam Hussein, therapy sessions exploring his insecurities, and eventual death providing emotional closure. The Super Best Friends episode assembled religious figures from multiple faiths as superheroes, including Muhammad in a 2001 portrayal, later banned after 2005 controversies. The Mormon episode balanced satirizing theology through "This is What Mormons Actually Believe" sequences while portraying Mormon believers as genuinely good people. These characterizations demonstrate South Park's approach of treating religious figures as real within the show's universe while refusing to place them beyond satirical examination, creating religious commentary that engages seriously with faith rather than simply dismissing or mocking it. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to time paradoxes, timeline breaks, and South Park's elastic relationship with continuity. South Park's deliberately inconsistent timeline creates one of the most fascinating aspects of its world building. The main characters have remained in fourth grade for over 25 years, while current events from different decades simultaneously exist in their universe. This temporal flexibility allows the show to comment on contemporary issues while maintaining its core cast of elementary school children, creating a floating timeline that prioritizes topical relevance over continuity. Major reality rewriting episodes have occasionally acknowledged or exploited these contradictions, and the recent COVID specials marked the first significant departure from the eternal childhood that defined the series. The eternal fourth grade represents South Park's most obvious temporal impossibility. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny have been 9 or 10 years old since 1997, never graduating to fifth grade despite the passage of real-world decades. This arrested development allows the show to maintain its child protagonist structure while exploring adult themes through their innocent perspective. The boys reference current technology, cultural trends, and political events as if they've always existed, creating an anachronistic present tense where smartphones coexist with the same elementary school experience that began in the late 1990s. Episodes occasionally reference the passage of time within the show's universe, creating continuity contradictions that the series rarely attempts to explain. Characters celebrate multiple Christmases, Halloweens, and birthdays without aging. Kyle's birthday party appears in early seasons when he turns 9, yet he remains 9 years old in episodes airing 20 years later. These temporal inconsistencies would break most shows' internal logic, but South Park treats continuity as a creative resource rather than a constraint. When maintaining consistency serves the story, the show respects its established facts. When breaking continuity creates better comedy or satire, the show ignores previous episodes without apology. The floating timeline approach allows South Park to function as perpetual contemporary satire. Each episode can reference whatever cultural moment currently dominates discourse, from specific news stories to viral internet phenomena to political controversies. This topical relevance, enabled by the show's 6-day production schedule, requires temporal flexibility. The boys can't have experienced 25 years of technological advancement from their perspective, yet they need to understand modern social media, gaming culture, and digital life to remain relevant characters. The show solves this problem by simply having them always exist in whatever now the episode requires. The pandemic 2-part special episodes demonstrated South Park's willingness to deliberately mess with its own continuity for storytelling purposes. The episodes featured the boys becoming international pop stars as part of a Peruvian flute band, with their success spreading across the globe. However, the most significant aspect came at the end when the show revealed that no one would remember the pandemic events, including the episodes themselves. This explicit erasure of continuity acknowledged how South Park treats most of its storylines as self-contained narratives rather than chapters in an ongoing saga. The pandemic special events were significant enough to deserve a 2-part storyline, but also ultimately meaningless in terms of permanent character or world changes. You're Getting Old and its follow-up Asperger's marked a rare moment when South Park appeared ready to fundamentally change its format. The episodes aired at the conclusion of season 15 and explored Stan's growing depression and cynicism as he turned 10 years old. Suddenly, everything Stan experienced sounded and looked literally like shit, with audio replaced by fart sounds and visuals becoming excrement. The metaphor for depression and loss of childhood wonder played surprisingly straight, creating genuine emotional weight. The storyline climaxed with Randy and Sharon divorcing, Stan moving to a different house, and the entire show's foundation seemingly shattered. These episodes generated significant speculation about whether South Park was ending or evolving into a different format. The show had been running for 15 seasons, and Parker and Stone had discussed feeling burned out on the formula. You're Getting Old felt like a deliberate deconstruction of everything South Park had been, suggesting the creators were ready to move on or drastically reinvent the series. However, the resolution in Asperger's walked back these changes, reuniting Stan's parents and returning everyone to the status quo. The entire arc became South Park acknowledging its own stagnation while ultimately choosing to continue in its established format. The member berries arc across seasons 1921 explored nostalgia and cultural memory through sentient berries that literally made people remember things. These adorable creatures whispered reminders about beloved cultural moments from the past, creating addictive nostalgia that influenced behavior and politics. The arc connected nostalgia to the 2016 presidential election, suggesting that cultural longing for imagined past greatness drove contemporary political movements. The member berries storyline played with South Park's own relationship to its history, as a show that had been running long enough to generate substantial nostalgia in its audience. The COVID specials represented the most significant timeline shift in South Park's history. For the first time since the show's premiere, the characters actually aged in real time. The specials took place during the pandemic, showing South Park dealing with quarantine, remote learning, and all the social disruptions that defined 2020 and 2021. More significantly, the timeline jumped forward to show the characters as adults, with Stan working a boring office job, Kyle becoming a guidance counselor, and Cartman converting to Judaism and starting a family. These flash forwards broke the eternal childhood that had defined the series for over 2 decades. The adult versions of the characters in the COVID specials generated enormous fan discussion about whether this represented South Park's new direction or a temporary storytelling choice. Seeing the characters aged up provided both wish fulfillment and disappointment, as fans could finally imagine their futures while also losing the childhood dynamic that made the show work. Subsequent episodes returned to the traditional format with the boys back in 4th grade, suggesting the COVID specials existed in their own separate continuity rather than permanently aging the cast. However, the COVID specials did introduce some apparently permanent changes to South Park's world. The town itself showed lasting effects from the pandemic, with certain businesses closed or changed and social relationships altered. Whether these changes persist in future regular episodes remains unclear, as the show continues treating continuity as flexible. The specials demonstrated that Parker and Stone could age up their characters when they wanted to explore different themes and dynamics, even if they didn't commit to making that change permanent. Meta-awareness of continuity issues appears frequently throughout the series. Characters occasionally reference events from previous episodes, acknowledging that they have a shared history even as that history contradicts their supposed ages and life experiences. The show's willingness to break the fourth wall and comment on its own construction allows it to acknowledge continuity problems without being bound by them. Episodes like Cartoon Wars directly addressed how animated shows handle continuity differently than live-action series, using Family Guy as a point of comparison and criticism. The 200th and 201st episodes created elaborate retrospectives that brought back numerous characters and storylines from throughout South Park's history. These milestone episodes attempted to weave together disparate threads from previous seasons, creating a continuity-heavy narrative that acknowledged the show's long history. However, even these continuity-focused episodes didn't establish firm rules about what remained canonical. They instead celebrated the accumulation of characters, jokes, and references that had built up over 14 seasons while maintaining flexibility about which elements would persist going forward. Certain episodes explicitly depict reality-altering events that should fundamentally change South Park's universe but are never referenced again. Characters die and return without explanation. Major disasters destroy the town only for it to be perfectly restored in the next episode. Supernatural events confirm the existence of aliens, magic, and other impossible phenomena that would revolutionize human understanding if they actually occurred. These reality breaks happen regularly without accumulating consequences, as each episode exists primarily as its own self-contained story, rather than a chapter in a continuous narrative. The show's approach to time and continuity reflects broader choices about what kind of series South Park wants to be. By maintaining a floating timeline and elastic continuity, Parker and Stone preserve maximum creative freedom to tell whatever stories interest them in any given week. They're not building toward a planned conclusion or carefully developing long-term character arcs, despite occasional multi-episode storylines. Instead, they're producing topical satire that responds to contemporary culture, using consistent characters in an inconsistent world. This approach has allowed South Park to maintain relevance far longer than most animated series. Shows that commit to strict continuity eventually paint themselves into corners or lose creative flexibility. South Park's willingness to ignore its own history when convenient means it can continually reinvent itself without the burden of accumulated storylines. The fourth grade characters who once dealt with 1990s cultural issues can now address social media, streaming culture, and contemporary political movements without the awkwardness of explaining how they've remained children throughout these changes. The COVID special's willingness to experiment with aging characters suggests that Parker and Stone might eventually transition South Park to a new format. The flash-forwards demonstrated that the characters can work as adults, opening possibilities for future evolution. However, the return to traditional format in subsequent episodes indicates that any such transition won't happen precipitously. South Park will likely continue its flexible approach to time and continuity, occasionally experimenting with different structures while maintaining its core identity as a show about four foul-mouthed kids in Colorado. South Park has kept its main characters in fourth grade for over 25 years, while incorporating current events from across multiple decades into their timeline. This floating timeline prioritizes topical relevance over continuity, allowing 9-year-olds to reference smartphones and social media that didn't exist when the show premiered. The pandemic episodes explicitly erased their own events from continuity, while You're Getting Old suggested ending the show before walking back all changes in Asperger's. The Member Berries arc explored nostalgia and cultural memory through sentient fruit that made characters remember the past. The COVID specials marked the first real departure from eternal childhood, showing characters aging during the pandemic and flashing forward to adult versions working ordinary jobs. These specials introduced Stan as a cynical office worker and Cartman as a convert to Judaism with a family, though subsequent to episodes returned to traditional fourth grade format. The show's meta-awareness through episodes like Cartoon Wars and the 200th, 201st milestone specials acknowledges continuity problems without committing to fixing them. This approach maintains maximum creative freedom, allowing Parker and Stone to tell contemporary stories without being constrained by accumulated history or logical timeline progression. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the most complete character transformation in television, Mr. Garrison's identity journey from homophobe to president. Herbert Garrison's evolution across South Park's 25-year run represents perhaps the most extensive character transformation in television history. This journey took a closeted, self-hating homosexual teacher through multiple identity shifts, relationships, gender transitions, and political incarnations, culminating in a presidential term that blurred the line between satire and reality. Garrison's character served as Parker and Stone's vehicle for exploring sexuality, gender identity, and political commentary across changing decades of American culture. Every phase of his development reflected contemporary social debates while maintaining the character's core neuroses and dysfunctions. The early seasons established Mr. Garrison as South Park Elementary's third-grade teacher with severe psychological issues. His most obvious quirk involved Mr. Hat, a hand puppet that Garrison treated as a separate entity with its own personality and agency. The puppet allowed Garrison to express thoughts and feelings he couldn't acknowledge directly, functioning as a manifestation of his repressed emotions and desires. Mr. Hat said horrible offensive things while Garrison maintained plausible deniability, creating a dynamic that parodied dissociative disorders while also providing dark comedy. The Mr. Hat relationship went beyond simple ventriloquism into genuine psychological dysfunction. Garrison conversed with the puppet as if it were real, became angry when others didn't treat Mr. Hat with proper respect, and seemed genuinely unaware that he was controlling the puppet's movements and words. Episodes showed Garrison at home interacting with Mr. Hat in private, confirming this wasn't merely a teaching affectation but a deeply embedded coping mechanism. The puppet represented everything Garrison couldn't accept about himself, particularly his homosexuality. The character's homosexuality was obvious to viewers from early episodes, though Garrison himself remained deeply closeted. His overcompensating attempts to appear heterosexual created obvious comedy, but the character's self-hatred around his sexuality added darker undertones. Garrison's homophobia, directed outward, actually reflected his internal struggle with his own identity, making him both perpetrator and victim of anti-gay prejudice. This characterization provided commentary on how closeted individuals often become the most vocal opponents of LGBTQ rights, projecting their self-hatred onto others. Big Gay Owl's Big Gay Boat Ride in Season 1 marked an early exploration of Garrison's sexuality without forcing him to confront it directly. The episode focused on Stan's dog Sparky being gay, but Garrison's reactions throughout revealed his own struggles. Big Gay Owl's acceptance of all sexual orientations contrasted sharply with Garrison's repressed approach, highlighting different ways of navigating LGBTQ identity. However, Garrison himself remained firmly closeted, not ready to acknowledge what everyone around him already recognized. The Chef Goes Nanners episode featured Garrison becoming temporarily attracted to Chef after his consciousness transferred into another body, creating confusion about whether Garrison was attracted to bodies or souls. These early explorations of sexuality through absurdist premises allowed South Park to address LGBTQ themes in its signature over-the-top style. Garrison's sexuality became a running joke, while also being treated as genuine character development rather than mere caricature. Mr. Garrison's relationship with Mr. Hat ended when he briefly accepted his homosexuality and replaced the puppet with Mr. Twig, a stick figure made from twigs. This transition represented an attempt at healthier psychological functioning, though Mr. Twig proved just as dysfunctional as his predecessor. The character couldn't maintain relationships without some form of prop or intermediary, suggesting that his psychological issues went deeper than simple sexual repression. Eventually, Mr. Hat returned, indicating Garrison's continued inability to process his identity and emotions directly. The full coming out happened gradually across multiple episodes and seasons. Garrison began dating men while still working as the boys' teacher, creating inappropriate situations where his personal life intersected uncomfortably with his professional role. His boyfriend, Mr. Slave, represented an extreme BDSM stereotype, with leather fetish wear and an exaggerated submissive personality. The relationship's explicit sexual nature, frequently referenced in dialogue and situations, pushed boundaries of what could be shown in animated comedy. The death camp of tolerance centered entirely on Garrison's sexuality and the boys' reaction to it. Garrison, now openly gay and in a relationship with Mr. Slave, performed increasingly inappropriate sexual acts in front of his students, specifically trying to get fired so he could sue for discrimination. The episode satirized both genuine workplace discrimination and cynical exploitation of anti-discrimination protections. When the school administration refused to fire Garrison despite his outrageous behavior, the boys' parents sent Stan, Kyle, and Cartman to tolerance camp for expressing discomfort. The episode's commentary on performative tolerance versus genuine acceptance remains one of South Park's most incisive explorations of liberal hypocrisy. Garrison's firing from South Park Elementary marked a significant shift in his character's role. Without the teaching position that had defined him since the series premiere, Garrison needed new context for his storylines. His relationship with Mr. Slave continued for several seasons, providing opportunities to explore gay culture, relationship dynamics, and LGBTQ political issues. However, the character's increasing prominence in these storylines led to his next major transformation. The sex change arc beginning in Season 9 took Garrison's character in a controversial new direction. In Mr. Garrison's fancy new vagina, he underwent gender confirmation surgery to become a woman, inspired by watching surgery shows on television rather than genuine gender dysphoria. The episode's treatment of transgender issues generated criticism for conflating sexual orientation with gender identity and portraying transition as a frivolous decision rather than a serious medical and psychological process. However, the episode's target wasn't transgender people themselves, but rather pop culture's superficial understanding of medical procedures and identity issues. Mrs. Garrison, as the character became known, maintained all of Garrison's personality traits and neuroses while navigating life as a woman. The show made clear that Garrison hadn't become a woman because of authentic gender dysphoria, but rather through the same dysfunctional decision-making that characterized all his choices. This distinction allowed South Park to satirize shallow approaches to gender identity without necessarily attacking transgender people themselves, though the line between satirizing ignorance and being offensive remained contested. Mrs. Garrison's attempts to date as a woman created storylines exploring straight male reactions to transgender women, lesbian dating dynamics when one partner recently transitioned, and the ongoing question of how Garrison understood his own identity. These episodes generated significant controversy from LGBTQ advocacy groups who argued that using transgender identity as comedy material contributed to discrimination and violence against transgender people. South Park's creators maintained they were satirizing societal reactions and Garrison's personal dysfunction, rather than mocking transgender identity itself. The character's relationships during this period included attempts to date straight men who didn't know about his transition history, exploring lesbian relationships, and generally creating chaos wherever he went. Mrs. Garrison remained as self-centered, neurotic, and dysfunctional as ever, with gender transition changing his physical form but not his fundamental personality problems. This characterization suggested that Garrison's issues went far deeper than sexuality or gender identity, reflecting psychological dysfunction that no amount of external change could resolve. Eventually, Garrison decided he wanted to transition back to being male, creating new storylines about the difficulties of reversing gender confirmation surgery. Episodes showed Garrison struggling with the medical, social, and personal challenges of detransitioning. Though these stories remained largely comic, rather than seriously examining the real issues faced by people navigating gender identity questions. The resolution of Garrison's gender journey came not through genuine self-discovery, but through the same absurd plot developments that characterized all South Park storylines. The transformation into a Donald Trump parody marked Garrison's most significant and culturally impactful character shift. Beginning in Season 19, Garrison started exhibiting personality traits, speaking patterns, and political positions identical to Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. The parallels became increasingly explicit until the show abandoned any pretense that Garrison was separate from Trump, having the character literally run for and win the presidency using Trump's exact slogans and positions. This evolution created unique challenges for Parker and Stone. By making an established character into a Trump stand-in, rather than creating a separate Trump character, they committed to following Garrison through a presidential storyline. The character became president in the show shortly before Trump won in reality, creating uncomfortable parallels between South Park's satirical world and actual American politics. For the first time, South Park's satire seemed to lag behind reality rather than exaggerate it, as actual events proved more absurd than the show's fictional version. President Garrison's storylines throughout seasons 2022 struggled to stay ahead of real-world Trump presidency chaos. Every satirical idea Parker and Stone developed seemed to be matched or exceeded by actual Trump administration events. The show addressed this difficulty directly in several episodes, with characters acknowledging that reality had become too insane to satirize effectively. Garrison, as president, remained self-centered and incompetent, but these character flaws seemed understated compared to actual political events. The decision to have Garrison lose re-election allowed the character to return to South Park proper. Post-presidency episodes showed Garrison readjusting to ordinary life, though he maintained his male identity and had somehow reversed his gender transition off-screen. The show never explained how this reversal happened, treating it as one more example of South Park's flexible continuity. Garrison returned to teaching at South Park Elementary, closing the circle on his character journey by placing him back in his original role despite everything that had happened. Current Garrison remains recognizably the same dysfunctional character who began the series with Mr. Hat, though he's accumulated decades of experiences and identity shifts. The character's complete journey encompasses closeted homosexuality, acceptance of gay identity, gender transition, detransition, presidential power, and return to ordinary life. This arc spans nearly every major identity and social issue of the past 25 years, making Garrison the most extensively developed character in South Park's ensemble cast. What makes Garrison's transformation significant is how it functioned as Parker and Stone's running commentary on changing American attitudes towards sexuality, gender, and identity. Each phase of Garrison's journey reflected contemporary debates and cultural shifts, with the character's dysfunction serving as a dark mirror for society's evolving, but still problematic approach to LGBTQ issues. The character was never simply positive or negative representation, but rather a satirical tool for exploring how America discusses identity without fully understanding it. Herbert Garrison began as a closeted gay teacher, using Mr. Hat Puppet to express repressed feelings and homophobic self-hatred. His coming out in early seasons introduced Mr. Slave as his BDSM boyfriend, with the death camp of tolerance satirizing performative liberal acceptance. Season 9's Mr. Garrison's Fancy New Vagina began his transition to Mrs. Garrison, generating controversy for conflating sexual orientation with gender identity and portraying transition as frivolous rather than serious. The character dated as a woman for several seasons before seeking to detransition, struggling with medical and social complications. Season 19 transformed Garrison into a Donald Trump parody who ran for and won the presidency, using Trump's exact slogans and positions. This created uncomfortable parallels when Trump actually won, making South Park's satire lag behind reality for the first time. President Garrison served through seasons 2022 before losing re-election and returning to South Park Elementary as a male teacher, somehow having reversed his transition off-screen. The complete arc encompassing closeted homosexuality, gay acceptance, gender transition, detransition, presidency, and return to teaching makes Garrison Television's most extensively transformed character, functioning as Parker and Stone's decades-long commentary on evolving American attitudes towards sexuality and identity. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to celebrity voices, infamous cameos, and the stars who regretted South Park forever. Celebrity appearances in South Park have ranged from enthusiastic collaborations to bitter feuds that permanently damaged relationships between stars and the show. The series' willingness to viciously mock public figures created a unique dynamic where some celebrities embraced the parody while others attempted to censor or retaliate against Parker and Stone. From early supporters who lent their voices to establish the show's credibility through the devastating Scientology episode that triggered permanent enemies, South Park's celebrity relationships reveal how the show navigated fame while maintaining its satirical edge. George Clooney's involvement with South Park predated the series' official premiere, making him one of the show's earliest celebrity champions. After seeing the Spirit of Christmas shorts circulating on VHS, Clooney became an active promoter of the clips, making copies and distributing them to friends and colleagues throughout Hollywood. When Parker and Stone developed the series proper, Clooney volunteered to provide a voice for the pilot episode. His contribution became legendary for its modesty. Clooney voiced Sparky, Stan's gay dog, meaning his performance consisted entirely of barking sounds. The credits listed him only as barking, creating a running joke about one of Hollywood's biggest stars providing animal noises for an obscure cable cartoon. Clooney's willingness to participate established South Park's credibility with other celebrities. His A-list status signaled that the show was worth taking seriously despite its crude animation and offensive content. The humility of accepting a barking role demonstrated the kind of self-deprecating humor that Parker and Stone appreciated, setting a template for celebrity involvement that put service to comedy above ego. Clooney's support during South Park's crucial early period helped the show survive its initial controversies and establish itself as culturally relevant rather than merely shocking. Jay Leno's contribution followed a similar pattern. The television host and comedian provided the meowing sounds for Kitty Cartman's cat in an early episode. Like Clooney, Leno accepted the role without demanding significant screen time or special treatment. These early celebrity collaborations established that South Park attracted genuine talent, willing to contribute in modest ways because they appreciated the show's humor and wanted to be associated with its success. Robert Smith of The Cure made a more substantial appearance in Mecha Streisand, an early episode that became legendary for its celebrity parody. The episode featured Barbra Streisand transformed into a giant mechanical monster, threatening South Park, requiring heroes to save the town. Smith appeared as himself, joining forces with other celebrities to battle Mecha Streisand in a Godzilla-style fight. His willingness to participate in such an absurd premise demonstrated the show's ability to attract musicians who appreciated surreal comedy. Smith actually recorded dialogue and performed a climactic sequence where he transformed into his own giant form to fight Streisand, committing fully to the ridiculous concept. The treatment of Barbra Streisand in that same episode revealed South Park's approach to celebrities who couldn't laugh at themselves. Streisand's character was portrayed as vain, self-important, and ultimately monstrous, with her transformation into Mecha Streisand serving as literalization of her perceived ego. The episode drew from Parker and Stone's genuine dislike of Streisand, making the parody personal rather than simply comedic. Streisand herself never publicly responded to the episode, though reports suggested she was not amused by her portrayal. Korn's Halloween special, Korn's Groovy Pirate Ghost Mystery, featured the new metal band as central characters helping solve a Scooby-Doo-style mystery in South Park. The band members voiced themselves and participated extensively in the episode's plot, performing songs and interacting with the main characters. Their enthusiasm for the project showed how South Park could attract contemporary music acts willing to embrace parody. The episode affectionately mocked both Korn and the Scooby-Doo formula simultaneously, requiring the band to accept being made fun of, while also being treated as important enough to deserve an entire episode. The Scientology episode, Trapped in the Closet, generated the most significant and lasting celebrity controversy in South Park's history. The episode depicted Scientology's origin story and belief system, labeling sequences. This is what Scientologists actually believe to distinguish religious doctrine from the episode's satirical elements. Tom Cruise appeared as a character who literally locked himself in a closet after being criticized, creating a dual metaphor about his alleged sexuality and his inability to handle criticism. The episode also featured John Travolta hiding in the closet with Cruise, extending the metaphor to another prominent Scientologist. The aftermath of Trapped in the Closet demonstrated the power that celebrities and religious organizations could wield against even successful television shows. According to various reports, Tom Cruise allegedly threatened to refuse promotion of Mission Impossible 3, unless Viacom, Comedy Central's parent company, prevented the episode from rerunning. Comedy Central did pull the episode from repeat rotation, though the network officially cited different reasons. The episode eventually returned to circulation, but the controversy established that certain targets could push back against South Park's satire with real consequences. Isaac Hayes' departure from South Park followed directly from the Scientology episode. Hayes, who voiced Chef from the series premiere, was himself a Scientologist. In March 2006, Hayes issued a statement saying he could no longer tolerate the show's religious intolerance, specifically citing the treatment of Scientology. However, reports suggested that Hayes didn't write the statement himself and that the Church of Scientology pressured him to quit. Hayes' son later confirmed that his father had suffered a stroke before the statement was released and may not have been capable of making such decisions independently. Parker and Stone responded to Hayes' departure with the episode The Return of Chef, which featured Chef returning to South Park brainwashed by a cult clearly representing Scientology. The episode used existing Hayes audio clips reassembled to create new dialogue, making Chef say increasingly inappropriate things to the children. The episode ended with Chef falling off a bridge, being torn apart by animals, defecating, and burning. The boys then delivered a sincere tribute to Chef while dismissing the cult that took him away, creating a distinction between the character they loved and the organization they blamed for Hayes' departure. Radiohead's refusal to appear in South Park created one of the show's most memorable revenge episodes. The band declined to participate in a planned episode, reportedly because they found the show too offensive. Parker and Stone responded by creating Scott Tenorman Must Die, widely considered one of South Park's greatest episodes. In the story, Cartman seeks revenge against a teenager who humiliated him, ultimately tricking Scott Tenorman into eating chili made from his parents' bodies. Radiohead appears at the episode's climax, witnessing Scott's breakdown and calling him a crybaby. The band ultimately did record their brief appearance, but the episode's dark revenge plot represented what happens when celebrities refuse to participate with South Park. Phil Collins provided a fascinating case of a celebrity appearing in South Park after being mocked. The show had criticized Collins winning an Academy Award over Blame Canada, South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut song. When the episode Timmy 2000 aired, featuring Timmy's disability being misdiagnosed as ADD, Collins appeared in the episode to face criticism. The episode portrayed him negatively, but Collins participated anyway, demonstrating a willingness to engage with criticism rather than hide from it. Sally Struthers received sustained mockery across multiple episodes, portrayed as overweight and exploiting starving African children for personal gain. The depictions were cruel by any standard, showing Struthers as grotesque and hypocritical. She never publicly responded to her portrayals, though the repeated targeting suggested Parker and Stone had specific issues with her activism work or public persona. The multiple appearances made clear that some celebrities became recurring targets rather than one-time jokes. Rob Reiner's portrayal in Butt Out depicted the director and activist as fascistic in his anti-smoking advocacy, literally forcing his views on unwilling participants through intimidation and manipulation. The episode targeted not just Reiner, but the broader tendency of activists to become authoritarian in pursuing their causes. Reiner became a symbol of liberal overreach in South Park's satirical universe, representing well-meaning progressives who couldn't see their own hypocrisy. Paris Hilton appeared in Stupid Spoiled Horror video playset as a literally toxic presence whose influence corrupted young girls. The episode showed Hilton committing suicide in Mr. Slave's rectum, one of South Park's more disturbing celebrity death scenes. The portrayal reflected cultural anxiety about celebrity influencers and reality television's impact on youth, using Hilton as the embodiment of vapid, harmful fame. Kanye West's Gay Fish episode became one of South Park's most successful celebrity parodies, creating a joke that followed West for years. The episode played on West's reputation for lacking humor about himself, showing him unable to understand a simple joke and becoming convinced he was literally a gay fish. West's actual response proved complicated. He initially seemed amused, tweeting about the episode, but later expressed frustration with how the joke persisted. The episode's success demonstrated South Park's ability to create celebrity-defining moments that transcended the show itself. Robert Redford's appearance in parodies of the Sundance Film Festival showed a celebrity willing to be mocked for his pretensions. Sundance's reputation for self-important independent cinema made it perfect South Park material, and episodes depicting the festival portrayed Redford as enabling artistic pretentiousness. His participation, or at least acceptance, of these parodies suggested comfort with his public image being satirized. Bill Gates's team declining South Park participation led to vengeful portrayals in early seasons. The show depicted Gates as ruthless and willing to kill competitors, exaggerating his Microsoft monopoly controversies into murderous supervillainy. These portrayals reflected broader cultural anxiety about tech industry power, using Gates as the symbol of corporate domination. The pattern across all celebrity interactions revealed South Park's central philosophy about fame and ego. Celebrities who embraced mockery and participated willingly often received affectionate treatment despite being made fun of. Those who took themselves too seriously or attempted to censor the show faced increasingly cruel parodies. The distinction wasn't about protecting friends, but about respecting people who could laugh at themselves while punishing those who couldn't. Celebrity appearances also served practical purposes beyond comedy. Famous voices in early episodes helped establish South Park's credibility and cultural relevance. The show's willingness to mock even participants demonstrated that nobody received special protection, maintaining satirical integrity. The feuds with powerful celebrities like Tom Cruise proved that Parker and Stone wouldn't back down even when facing potential career consequences. The evolution of celebrity treatment across South Park's run reflected changing entertainment culture. Early episodes featured celebrities more as special events, while later seasons integrated them casually into storylines. The show stopped treating famous people as remarkable, instead using them as tools for whatever satirical point each episode required. This shift paralleled broader cultural changes in how society viewed celebrity, moving from reverence to casual mockery as social media eliminated the distance between stars and audiences. George Clooney championed early South Park and voiced Sparky the dog's Barking in the pilot, with credits listing him only as Barking. Robert Smith of The Cure appeared in Make a Streisand to fight Barbra Streisand as a giant monster. Korn starred in their own Halloween special. The Scientology episode Trapped in the Closet created permanent enemies when Tom Cruise allegedly threatened Mission. Impossible 3 promotion unless Viacom pulled the episode, and Isaac Hayes quit voicing Chef, leading to The Return of Chef killing the character. Radiohead initially refused participation, inspiring Scott Tenorman Must Die, where Cartman feeds a teenager chili made from his parents, though the band eventually recorded their cameo. Phil Collins appeared after South Park mocked his Oscar win. Kanye West's Gay Fish episode created a joke that followed him for years, playing on his inability to laugh at himself. Sally Struthers, Rob Reiner, and Paris Hilton received sustained cruel mockery across multiple episodes. The pattern revealed South Park's philosophy. Celebrities who embraced parody received affectionate treatment, while those who couldn't laugh at themselves faced increasingly vicious portrayals, with the Scientology war demonstrating Parker and Stone's willingness to fight powerful organizations despite potential career consequences. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to character secrets, hidden details, and the background facts even hardcore fans miss. Overlooked character details throughout South Park reveal surprising depth beneath the crude satire. While casual viewers see simple cartoon children engaging in offensive adventures, closer examination exposes complex characterization, tragic circumstances, and deliberate creative choices that add weight to comedy. These hidden elements range from Kenny's genuine poverty and family dysfunction through Butter's abusive home situation to Craig and Tweek's relationship development across 20 seasons, demonstrating how Parker and Stone layered serious themes into their seemingly simplistic show. Kenny McCormick's poverty extends far beyond his torn orange parka and muffled speech. The show depicts the McCormick family's economic struggles with genuine severity, rarely seen in comedy. Kenny's parents are explicitly shown using methamphetamine, with multiple episodes featuring them high or discussing their drug habits casually. The family's addiction isn't played entirely for laughs, but presented as the sad reality of rural poverty that traps families in cycles of dysfunction and deprivation. The McCormick household suffers from more than just financial problems. Kenny's father, Stuart, works inconsistently when he can find employment, while his mother, Carol, struggles with her own substance abuse issues. The parents fight frequently, their arguments often turning physical in ways that traumatize Kenny and his younger sister, Karen. Episodes set in the McCormick home show an environment of genuine neglect, with Kenny taking on parental responsibilities for Karen because their actual parents can't function effectively. Kenny's deaths across hundreds of episodes take on darker meaning when viewed through the lens of poverty. While the running gag functions primarily as absurdist comedy, it also represents how poor children face disproportionate risks from inadequate safety measures, lack of medical care, and exposure to dangerous situations. Kenny dies in ways that wealthier children would survive because he lacks the protection that privilege provides. His resurrection each episode without explanation maintains the comedy while obscuring this class commentary. The Mysterian trilogy revealed the canonical explanation for Kenny's immortality. His parents belonged to a Cthulhu-worshipping cult, and their participation cursed Kenny to die repeatedly and be reborn with full memory of his previous deaths. This storyline, appearing in seasons 14-15, treated Kenny's situation with surprising seriousness. The episodes explored his psychological trauma from experiencing death countless times and remembering each incident while everyone around him forgot. His superhero identity as Mysterian allowed him to use his curse productively, though the episodes made clear that his immortality was torment rather than gift. Kenny's relationship with his sister Karen provided some of the show's most genuinely touching moments. He protected her from their parents' dysfunction, shielded her from awareness of their poverty's full extent, and sacrificed for her well-being despite being a child himself. The episode The Poor Kid explicitly addressed Child Protective Services, investigating the McCormick family, showing Kenny fighting to keep Karen safe even when their home situation was objectively terrible. These episodes balanced South Park's comedy with real emotion, using Kenny's character to explore how poverty affects families without losing the show's satirical edge. Butters Stotch's home life represents one of South Park's darkest ongoing storylines, depicted through a veneer of suburban normality that makes the abuse more disturbing. His parents, Stephen and Linda Stotch, appear superficially like typical middle-class parents, but their treatment of Butters crosses well beyond strict discipline into genuine psychological and physical abuse. Stephen Stotch controls Butters through fear and punishment disproportionate to any misbehavior. The groundings Butters receives happen with disturbing frequency for minor infractions or situations entirely beyond his control. His father's rage often erupts suddenly, creating an unpredictable home environment where Butters never knows what might trigger punishment. The psychological impact manifests in Butters' anxious, eager-to-please personality, as he desperately tries to avoid his parents' anger through perfect compliance. Butters' very own episode revealed the full extent of his family's dysfunction. The episode showed Stephen Stotch visiting gay bathhouses while maintaining his heterosexual married identity, then attempting to murder Linda when she discovered his secret. The attempted murder was played for dark comedy, but the episode's underlying premise showcased genuine domestic violence emerging from repressed sexuality and masculine shame. Butters witnessed these events, adding to his trauma, while neither parent acknowledged the psychological damage they caused. Linda Stotch's character developed across multiple episodes as complicit in Butters' abuse and struggling with her own mental health issues. She attempted suicide in one episode, tried to drown Butters in another, and generally oscillated between smothering affection and explosive rage. Her instability mirrored Stephen's, creating a home where Butters faced threats from both parents. The show played these situations for comedy while maintaining awareness that the depicted behavior represented genuine child abuse. The contrast between Butters' sweet personality and his horrible home life created tragic irony. Despite suffering abuse that would traumatize most children permanently, Butters maintained his innocence and desire to please others. His resilience became both admirable and sad, suggesting a child in survival mode who couldn't afford to process his trauma. Episodes occasionally showed cracks in his cheerful facade, with Butters expressing frustration or anger before quickly suppressing these feelings to avoid parental punishment. Token Black's name changed to Tolkien. Black in Season 25 represented one of South Park's most audacious continuity retcons. For the show's entire previous run, the character was understood to be named Token, a satirical joke about him being the token black kid in an overwhelmingly white town. His last name Black made the joke explicit. The Big Fix revealed that everyone except Stan had always known the character's name was Tolkien, referencing J.R.R. Tolkien, with Stan's mispronunciation as Token exposing his subconscious racism. The retcon worked on multiple levels. It punished fans who never questioned the obviously racist name, suggesting their acceptance of Token reflected their own problematic assumptions. It also demonstrated how South Park could rewrite its own history and insist the new version had always been true, gaslighting audiences while making a point about how society discusses race. The character himself remained unchanged aside from the name, but the revelation transformed how viewers understood his role in the show. Tolkien's family represented South Park's wealthiest residents, creating ironic juxtaposition with racial stereotypes about black poverty. His parents had successful careers, lived in a mansion, and provided Tolkien with every material advantage. Episodes occasionally addressed how Tolkien's wealth separated him from both the white middle-class kids and stereotypical black cultural experiences, leaving him culturally isolated. This exploration of race, class, and identity through a child character demonstrated South Park's ability to engage seriously with social issues, despite its crude presentation. Craig Tucker and Tweak's relationship evolution across 20 seasons provided South Park's most developed LGBTQ youth representation. The characters existed separately for years before Tweak x Craig in season 19 brought them together through an absurd premise. Asian students created yaoi artwork shipping Craig and Tweak romantically, and the town's overwhelming support for the fictional relationship pressured the boys into actually dating. What began as social pressure became genuine connection as Craig and Tweak discovered they actually liked each other. The relationship's development across subsequent seasons portrayed a realistic portrayal of young gay romance. Craig and Tweak faced relationship challenges, communication problems, and typical couple conflicts while also dealing with being openly gay in elementary school. Their classmates accepted the relationship remarkably well, with South Park treating gay youth relationships as normal rather than exceptional. This representation felt groundbreaking for a show not primarily focused on LGBTQ issues. Put It Down showed the relationship's emotional depth when Tweak's anxiety about North Korean nuclear threats damaged their partnership. Craig struggled to understand Tweak's mental health needs, learned appropriate support strategies, and ultimately helped his boyfriend through crisis. The episode balanced comedy with genuine relationship advice, creating a touching story about how partners support each other through anxiety and fear. The song Craig wrote for Tweak became surprisingly popular, demonstrating that South Park could create genuinely affecting content alongside its crude humor. The relationship continued through subsequent seasons without being erased or treated as a phase. Craig and Tweak remained boyfriends, their relationship becoming part of South Park's normal reality. This consistency mattered for LGBTQ representation, showing young gay relationships as stable and valid rather than experimental or temporary. The show's willingness to maintain their romance demonstrated commitment to the characters beyond initial satirical purposes. Timmy Birch's disability representation demonstrated South Park's complicated relationship with offensive content and genuine respect. Timmy, introduced in Season 4, had physical and cognitive disabilities limiting his vocabulary primarily to his own name. The character could have been purely exploitative, but the show treated Timmy as a complete character with agency, desires, and capabilities despite his limitations. Timmy 2000 addressed ADD overdiagnosis by showing Timmy as genuinely disabled in contrast to other children incorrectly diagnosed with attention disorders. The episode argued that medicating normal childhood behavior diminished resources for people with actual disabilities, using Timmy as the legitimate case against which others were measured. This approach acknowledged real disability while critiquing how society pathologized typical child development. The Phil Collins controversy around Timmy demonstrated how disability representation generates legitimate concern alongside overreaction. Collins criticized South Park for mocking disabled people, leading to his negative portrayal in subsequent episodes. However, many disability advocates defended Timmy's character as positive representation, showing a disabled person integrated into community life, pursuing interests, and treated as equal by peers. The debate revealed how South Park's offensive surface could obscure more nuanced underlying messages. Timmy's friendship with Jimmy Valmer, another disabled character, created a relationship between two people with different disabilities supporting each other. Jimmy had a speech impediment and used crutches, creating different challenges than Timmy faced. Their friendship normalized disability as one aspect of identity rather than defining characteristic, with both characters having personalities, interests, and storylines beyond their disabilities. This approach felt more respectful than many supposedly progressive disability representations that defined characters entirely through their challenges. These overlooked details demonstrated how South Park functioned on multiple levels. Casual viewers could watch for crude humor and offensive jokes without recognizing deeper characterization. More attentive audiences discovered that Parker and Stone embedded genuine social commentary, complex character development, and surprisingly respectful treatment of serious issues beneath the show's deliberately offensive presentation. The contrast between surface crudity and underlying sophistication defined South Park's unique place in television history. Kenny McCormick's family poverty extends beyond his torn parka to explicit parental meth addiction, shown across multiple episodes, with Kenny taking parental responsibility for his sister Karen because Stuart and Carol can't function. The Mysterian trilogy revealed Kenny's immortality curse came from his parents' Cthulhu cult membership, making him die and resurrect with full memory of each death. Butterscotch suffers genuine abuse from his parents Stephen and Linda with disproportionate groundings, Stephen's attempted murder of Linda in Butter's very own episode, and Linda's suicide and drowning attempts, creating truly dysfunctional home life beneath suburban normality. Token Black became Tolkien Black in Season 25's The Big Fix, retroactively changing his name to reference J.R.R. Tolkien and revealing Stan's mispronunciation as Token exposed subconscious racism, gaslighting audiences who never questioned the obviously satirical name. Craig Tucker and Tweak Tweak's relationship developed from yaoi fan Art Premise in Tweak x Craig into genuine romance portrayed across multiple seasons, with Put It Down showing Craig supporting Tweak's anxiety about nuclear threats through touching musical number. Timmy Birch's disability representation balanced potential offensiveness with genuine respect, using him in Timmy 2000 to critique ADD overdiagnosis while showing disabled person integrated into community life. These hidden details demonstrate South Park's multi-layered approach, embedding serious character development beneath deliberately crude surface presentation. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to Terrence and Phillip, the show within a show that became meta commentary on South Park itself. Terrence and Phillip represent South Park's most elaborate act of self-parody and audience trolling. These Canadian fart joke comedians exist within South Park's universe as the boys' favorite television show, creating a meta layer where Parker and Stone mock their own work through deliberately lowbrow characters. From the infamous April Fool's betrayal through their movie-within-a-movie role in Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, Terrence and Phillip serve as both simple recurring gag and sophisticated commentary on entertainment, criticism, and the nature of comedy itself. The duo's television show appears frequently throughout South Park, usually shown briefly as the boys watch at home or discuss episodes. The Terrence and Phillip show features primitive animation even by South Park standards, consisting of two Canadian characters with oval heads and beady eyes engaging in incredibly simple comedy routines. Their humor centers almost entirely on flatulence, with nearly every joke building toward or resulting from fart sounds. The characters laugh hysterically at their own jokes, suggesting an audience equally unsophisticated as the humor itself. The Canadian character design established immediate visual distinction from South Park's American characters. Terrence and Phillip have heads that divide horizontally when they speak, with the top of their heads flopping up and down like Muppet mouths. This bizarre anatomical choice applied to all Canadian characters in South Park's universe, creating a visual shorthand for nationality. Their beady eyes, narrow faces, and overall simplified appearance made them instantly recognizable, while also marking them as even cruder than South Park's already crude animation. The April Fool's episode remains one of television's greatest trolling moments. On the 1st of April 1998, audiences tuned in expecting to learn the answer to the previous episode's cliffhanger, who was Cartman's father. Instead, Comedy Central aired Terrence and Phillip in Not Without My Anus, a full 22-minute episode featuring only the Canadian duo, without any appearance by South Park's main characters. The episode followed Terrence and Phillip being accused of murder, fleeing to Iran, dealing with Saddam Hussein's terror plots, and ultimately proving their innocence. The backlash was immediate and severe. Fans felt genuinely betrayed by having their cliffhanger expectations subverted for an episode of content they viewed as inferior to regular South Park. Phone lines at Comedy Central received angry calls from viewers demanding to know what happened. The network's switchboard was overwhelmed with complaints. Parker and Stone had successfully trolled their entire audience, proving that even fans who claimed to appreciate South Park's boundary-pushing humor had limits on what they'd accept. The trolling continued in subsequent episodes through characters acknowledging audience anger. When the actual Cartman's father reveal aired, weeks later, the episode opened with characters discussing fan outrage about the Terrence and Phillip special. This meta-commentary acknowledged the prank while refusing to apologize for it, establishing that Parker and Stone would prioritize their own amusement over audience expectations. The April Fool's episode became legendary as an example of creators using their platform to deliberately antagonize fans. What made the prank sophisticated was how it functioned as commentary on comedy itself. Critics who dismissed South Park as nothing more than crude fart jokes were proven partially right, as audiences rejected an entire episode built almost entirely on flatulence humor. The negative reaction revealed that South Park fans valued more than simple crudeness, requiring the wit, satire, and character development that regular episodes provided. Terrence and Phillip existed as a reductio ad absurdum of South Park's crudest elements, showing what the series would be if critics' dismissals were accurate. The role of Terrence and Phillip in South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, elevated their meta-commentary function. The movie within a movie, Asses of Fire, featured Terrence and Phillip delivering non-stop profanity and fart jokes, with the film's R rating making it forbidden fruit for the boys. After sneaking into the theater, Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny began repeating the vulgar language they learned, triggering a moral panic about entertainment corrupting children. The movie's plot literalized debates about media influence, with parents blaming Terrence and Phillip for their children's behavior rather than examining their own parenting. The war with Canada that resulted from this moral panic made Terrence and Phillip the catalyst for international conflict. The United States government blamed Canadian entertainment for American cultural degradation, leading to boycotts, border tensions, and ultimately military action. This absurd escalation parodied real-world controversies about entertainment's social impact, with Terrence and Phillip standing in for South Park itself as the cultural product that supposedly threatened social order. Terrence and Phillip's own characterization in the movie revealed them as earnest performers who never intended to corrupt children. They were simply comedians doing what they thought was funny, unaware that their work had sparked international incident. Their innocence contrasted with the accusations leveled against them, suggesting that entertainment content itself is neutral, with meaning imposed by audiences and critics. The movie used Terrence and Phillip to argue that blaming entertainment for social problems missed the actual sources of dysfunction in politics, parenting, and cultural anxiety. The Canadian mythology surrounding Terrence and Phillip expanded across numerous episodes. They were treated as Canadian national heroes, their show representing the pinnacle of Canadian cultural achievement. This characterization parodied both American stereotypes about Canadian blandness and Canadian cultural insecurity about being overshadowed by American entertainment. By making Terrence and Phillip Canada's greatest cultural export, South Park mocked the entire concept of national identity being tied to entertainment products. The Royal Canadian Wedding Special featured Terrence and Phillip prominently, as their participation in royal events seemed natural within South Park's Canadian world-building. The special explored Canadian monarchy, social customs, and cultural quirks through the lens of Terrence and Phillip's celebrity status. Their presence at significant national events suggested they occupied a cultural position analogous to beloved entertainers in real nations, making them simultaneously absurd figures and genuine pillars of their society. The recurring appearances of Terrence and Phillip across 25 seasons demonstrated Parker and Stone's commitment to the meta-joke. The duo could have been retired after serving their initial purpose, but their continued presence reinforced South Park's self-awareness. Every Terrence and Phillip appearance reminded audiences that the show understood exactly what critics thought of it and refused to pretend otherwise. The characters became a running acknowledgement that yes, South Park did rely heavily on crude humor, and no, the creators weren't ashamed of that fact. The relationship between Terrence and Phillip mirrored Parker and Stone's own creative partnership. The duo clearly worked together as equals with genuine affection despite their constant bickering and physical comedy violence. Their friendship paralleled the boys' friendship and the creators' relationship, creating layers of meta-commentary where multiple partnerships reflected each other. This mirroring suggested that crude comedy could coexist with genuine connection, that lowbrow entertainment could emerge from authentic creative partnerships. The defense of Terrence and Philip by South Park's child characters represented Parker and Stone defending their own work through fictional proxies. When adults dismissed the Canadian show as worthless garbage, the boys argued passionately that it was funny, entertaining, and worth watching. These arguments paralleled real defenses of South Park against critics who dismissed it as nothing more than offensive shock humor. By having children defend Terrence and Philip, the show positioned its audience as the true arbiters of comedy's value against critics who didn't understand or appreciate the humor. What makes Terrence and Philip's function significant is how they allowed South Park to address criticism preemptively. By creating characters who embodied the worst accusations against the show, Parker and Stone could acknowledge those criticisms while demonstrating that South Park offered more complexity than simple fart jokes. Terrence and Philip were what South Park would be if critics were right, proving through contrast that South Park actually contained substantial satire, character development, and cultural commentary alongside its crude humor. The Canadian stereotypes weaponized through Terrence and Philip demonstrated how South Park used offensive content strategically rather than gratuitously. The floppy heads, beady eyes, and obsession with flatulence created a Canadian caricature so absurd that it couldn't be taken as genuine mockery. The exaggeration pushed beyond offense into surrealism, with Canadian characters aware of their own stereotyping and often commenting on it. This self-awareness transformed potentially offensive content into commentary on how stereotypes function in comedy. Terrence and Philip's lasting impact extended beyond South Park itself into broader comedy culture. The April Fool's prank became legendary as an example of medium-specific humor that could only work in television. The episode demonstrated how creators could use distribution schedules and audience expectations as part of the joke itself, pioneering a form of meta-humor that influenced subsequent comedians. The willingness to sacrifice audience goodwill for a single elaborate joke showed commitment to comedy over commercial consideration. Terrence and Philip exist as South Park's self-parody, Canadian fart joke comedians who star in the boys' favorite TV show. Their April Fool's episode on 1st of April 1998 replaced the anticipated Cartman's father reveal with "Not Without My Anus," causing massive fan backlash and proving audiences valued more than crude humor, despite claims to appreciate South Park's offensiveness. In South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, their movie Asses of Fire sparked moral panic about entertainment corrupting children, leading to war with Canada and literalizing debates about media influence. Terrence and Philip are treated as Canadian national heroes despite their primitive animation and flatulence-focused comedy, with their show representing Parker and Stone's acknowledgement of critical dismissals. Their relationship mirrors the creators' partnership, while the boys' defense of the Canadian duo represents Parker and Stone defending their own work through proxies. The characters function as meta-commentary showing what South Park would be if critics were right, proving through contrast that the actual show offers more sophisticated satire alongside crude humor. Their continued appearances across 25 seasons demonstrate ongoing self-awareness, with Canadian stereotypes pushed into surrealism through floppy heads and beady eyes that transform potentially offensive content into commentary on how stereotypes function in comedy. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to censorship battles, network fights, and the episodes that were banned forever, South Park's 25-year censorship history chronicles an evolving battle between creators determined to push boundaries and networks attempting to manage controversy without killing their most valuable property. From Muhammad episodes permanently removed from existence through Scientology, wars that cost the show its beloved chef voice, to international bans that sparked retaliatory episodes, South Park's relationship with censorship became part of its identity. The show that began by testing Comedy Central's standards eventually faced genuine death threats, government interference, and permanent bans that demonstrated real limits on free expression. The Muhammad crisis represented South Park's most serious censorship challenge and permanent content loss. Episodes 200 and 201 airing in Season 14, were conceived as anniversary specials bringing back characters and storylines from throughout the show's history. The episodes featured nearly every celebrity South Park had ever mocked, demanding the boys deliver Muhammad so they could steal his power to avoid being mocked. The premise satirized both celebrity sensitivity to criticism and fears around depicting Islamic figures. Muhammad appeared in the episodes, though his image was censored by a black box labeled Censored, creating visual joke while technically avoiding showing the prophet. However, this compromise satisfied no one. Before episode 201 aired, the radical group Revolution Muslim posted a warning on their website. The message didn't constitute an explicit death threat, but heavily implied violence could follow, referencing what happened to Dutch filmmaker Theo van Gogh, murdered by Islamic extremists in 2004. The message provided Parker and Stone's home addresses, their production office location, and suggested these creators could face similar fates. Comedy Central responded by censoring episode 201 far beyond what Parker and Stone intended. The network bleeped substantial dialogue, including an entire speech by Kyle about intimidation and fear. The censorship was so extensive that segments became incomprehensible, with long stretches of dialogue covered by continuous beeping. Parker and Stone issued a statement saying they weren't allowed to discuss what was censored or why, though the circumstances made clear that network fear rather than creative choice drove the decision. Both episodes were immediately pulled from South Park Studios' Comedy Central's streaming platform and never re-aired. When South Park eventually moved to HBO Max and later Paramount Plus, episodes 200 and 201 remained excluded. The official stance from Viacom-CBS stated that the decision came after reviewing the situation and consulting with Parker and Stone. However, the creators' own statement made their position clear. In the 14 years we've been doing South Park, we have never done a show that we couldn't stand behind. We delivered our version of the show to Comedy Central, and they made a determination to alter the episode. It wasn't some meta joke on our part. Comedy Central added the bleeps. We've been intimidated. The permanent loss of these episodes represented a significant censorship victory against satirical comedy. Unlike temporary bans that eventually lifted, episodes 200 and 201 have remained unavailable through official channels for over a decade. The only way to view them involves finding unofficial uploads or physical media from fans who recorded the original broadcasts. This accessibility limitation means an entire generation of South Park fans has never seen these episodes, creating a genuine hole in the series' catalog. The Muhammad situation was complicated by South Park's previous depiction of the prophet without controversy. The Super Best Friends episode from Season 5 featured Muhammad as a member of a superhero team alongside other religious figures. The episode aired in 2001 without generating significant backlash or protests. Muhammad appeared as a regular character with a design similar to other religious figures, performing superhuman feats and working with the team to fight evil. However, the 2005 Danish cartoon controversy changed the cultural context. When a Danish newspaper published cartoons depicting Muhammad, violent protests erupted globally. Danish embassies were attacked, and dozens died in related violence. The international crisis established that depicting Muhammad had become a third-rail issue in a way it hadn't been previously. Comedy Central responded by retroactively banning Super Best Friends from reruns and streaming, despite its peaceful 2001 airing. This retroactive censorship demonstrated how cultural context could transform acceptable content into forbidden material. The exact same portrayal that generated no controversy in 2001 became untouchable after 2005's events. The episode remained officially banned until 2013, when Comedy Central quietly returned it to streaming with Muhammad's image still intact, creating an odd situation where an earlier, more visible depiction was available, while later, more censored versions remained banned. The Trapped in the Closet episode generated different censorship pressures from a wealthy religious organization rather than threats of violence. The Season 9 episode depicted Scientology's origin story and practices, labeling segments, "This is what Scientologists actually believe," to distinguish satirical elements from genuine religious doctrine. The episode portrayed Tom Cruise literally hiding in a closet, refusing to come out, creating dual metaphor about his alleged sexuality and inability to handle criticism. According to multiple sources, Tom Cruise threatened to refuse promotional duties for Mission Impossible 3 unless Viacom prevented the episode from rerunning, given that Paramount Pictures, Viacom's film division, distributed the Mission Impossible franchise. Cruise had substantial leverage. Comedy Central did pull the episode from scheduled reruns in March 2006, though network executives officially cited different reasons. The Scientology organization itself allegedly pressured Viacom-CBS to suppress the episode through various means, including threatened legal action and private investigators examining Parker, Stone, and Comedy Central executives. Multiple journalists reported that Scientology's response to the episode went far beyond normal religious reaction to satire, involving systematic campaigns to intimidate and silence the show's creators. Isaac Hayes' departure as Chef's voice followed directly from the Scientology episode. Hayes, a prominent Scientologist, issued a statement in March 2006 claiming he could no longer tolerate the show's religious intolerance. However, substantial evidence suggests Hayes didn't make this decision independently. His son later revealed that Hayes had suffered a stroke before the statement's release, leaving him unable to make such decisions. Friends suggested the Church of Scientology wrote and released the statement using Hayes' name without his genuine consent. Parker and Stone's response demonstrated their refusal to back down despite losing a key cast member. The return of Chef killed the character in grotesquely violent fashion, using reassembled Hayes audio to create new dialogue. Chef returned to South Park brainwashed by Super Adventure Club, a thinly veiled Scientology parody. The episode had Chef say increasingly inappropriate things to children, then showed him dying through multiple gruesome means, falling off a bridge, landing on rocks, being mauled by animals, burning in fire, and finally defecating before his death. The boy's eulogy for Chef distinguished between the beloved character and the organization that took him away. This separation allowed Parker and Stone to honor Hayes' contribution while blaming Scientology for the relationship's end. The episode's brutal treatment of Chef reflected genuine anger at losing Hayes under circumstances the creators viewed as manipulated by a predatory organization. The Bloody Mary episode faced censorship from Catholic protests rather than threats of violence or corporate pressure. The Season 9 episode featured a Virgin Mary statue bleeding from its anus, with characters debating whether the phenomenon represented divine miracle or simple menstruation. The Catholic League, led by Bill Donahue, organized protests and boycott threats against Comedy Central and advertisers. Comedy Central pulled the episode from reruns and initially refused to air it again. The network's decision came despite the episode containing substantially less graphic content than many other South Park episodes. The Catholic Church's organized protests demonstrated that even less violent religious groups could successfully pressure networks into censorship when sufficiently mobilized. The episode eventually returned to circulation, but the temporary ban proved that Catholic organizations wielded substantial influence despite lacking the threat implications of Islamic extremist groups. International censorship created different challenges as various countries banned South Park entirely or prohibited specific episodes. China banned the show completely after Banned in China, criticized the country's censorship practices and Hollywood's willingness to self-censor for Chinese market access. The episode depicted Disney, NBA, and other American entertainment companies compromising their values to maintain Chinese distribution, with Randy Marsh literally selling out American principles for access to Chinese markets. China's response proved the episode's point by banning all South Park content from Chinese internet and streaming services. The show became unavailable through official channels, with search results scrubbed and references removed. Parker and Stone issued a mock apology that actually intensified their criticism. Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Xi doesn't look just like Winnie the Pooh at all. This retaliatory episode and mock apology demonstrated South Park's evolution in handling censorship. Rather than backing down when faced with bans, Parker and Stone doubled down with subsequent content that explicitly mocked censorship attempts. the willingness to sacrifice entire markets rather than compromise satirical content, showed genuine commitment to creative freedom beyond mere commercial calculation. Other countries implemented selective bans based on local sensitivities. Various episodes were prohibited in different nations for content that exceeded local broadcast standards or violated specific laws. The global distribution of South Park meant navigating dozens of different censorship regimes, each with unique standards and enforcement mechanisms. What aired freely in the United States might be heavily edited or completely banned elsewhere, creating a patchwork of availability across international markets. The Cartoon Wars two-part episode provided meta-commentary on South Park's own censorship challenges. The storyline focused on Family Guy planning to depict Muhammad, with Cartman attempting to get the show canceled before the episode could air. The episode satirized both legitimate concerns about religious sensitivity and cynical exploitation of those concerns to suppress content. Comedy Central censored the actual Muhammad image in South Park's episode about censoring Muhammad images, creating layers of irony as the network proved the episode's points about network's unwillingness to defend controversial content. The censorship of Cartoon Wars demonstrated the difference between creator intent and network implementation. Parker and Stone intended to show Muhammad as part of their commentary on fear-based censorship, but Comedy Central refused to air the image despite it being central to the episode's message. This disconnect meant audiences saw a heavily censored product rather than what the creators actually made, fundamentally altering the viewing experience and weakening the satirical impact. The evolution of Comedy Central's relationship with South Park reflected changing cultural attitudes toward acceptable content. Early seasons pushed boundaries around profanity, violence, and sexual content with relatively little network interference. As the show became more culturally prominent and targeted more powerful interests, censorship increased even as the network's financial dependence on South Park grew. This created tension between Comedy Central's need for South Park's ratings and advertisers while managing the controversies those episodes generated. Parker and Stone's consistent response to censorship involved acknowledging defeats while refusing to self-censor preemptively. They continued creating content that tested boundaries, accepting that some material would face network resistance. This approach maintained their satirical edge while recognizing practical limitations on what could actually air. The permanent loss of episodes 200 and 201 represented their most significant defeat, but also demonstrated the genuine risks they faced in pursuing controversial content. The censorship battles ultimately became part of South Park's identity and cultural significance. The show mattered partly because it pushed boundaries others wouldn't approach, faced consequences others didn't risk, and refused to back down despite real costs. The banned episodes existed as proof that South Park's boundary pushing wasn't merely marketing, but genuine commitment to satirical freedom that sometimes resulted in content too controversial even for its own network. Muhammad episodes 200 and 201 were permanently banned after Revolution Muslim posted implied threats including Parker and Stone's addresses, with Comedy Central heavily censoring episode 201's dialogue including Kyle's entire speech about intimidation. Both episodes remain unavailable on all official streaming platforms over a decade later, though earlier Super Best Friends episode showing Muhammad without controversy in 2001 was retroactively banned post-2005 Danish cartoon crisis before quietly returning in 2013. The Scientology episode Trapped in the Closet was pulled from reruns after Tom Cruise allegedly threatened to refuse Mission Impossible 3 promotion, with Isaac Hayes quitting as Chef's voice leading to the return of Chef killing the character through multiple gruesome deaths while blaming the Super Adventure Club Scientology parody. Catholic League protests got Bloody Mary temporarily pulled for depicting a Virgin Mary statue bleeding from its anus. China banned all South Park after Banned in China, criticized Chinese censorship and Hollywood self-censorship, with Parker and Stone responding through mock apologies saying, "We welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts, and we love money more than freedom and democracy." The Cartoon Wars episodes provided meta-commentary on censorship, while Comedy Central censored the actual Muhammad image central to the satire. These battles demonstrate genuine limits on free expression even for Comedy Central's most valuable property, with episodes 200 and 201's permanent removal representing censorship's most significant victory against the show. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to theatrical films, video games, and South Park's expansion beyond television. South Park's multimedia expansion transformed a crude animated series into a comprehensive entertainment franchise spanning theatrical films, critically acclaimed video games, mobile apps, and interactive experiences. From the Oscar-nominated Bigger, Longer, and Uncut Through the Stick of Truth's gaming revolution to the ongoing development of new games and media, Parker and Stone's direct creative involvement distinguished South Park's expansion from typical licensed products. Their insistence on maintaining quality control meant some projects succeeded spectacularly, while others never materialized, creating an uneven but ultimately impressive transmedia universe. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut arrived in theaters on the 30th of June, 1999, during the show's third season when its cultural impact peaked. The film represented a massive gamble for Parker and Stone, who needed to create something substantial, enough for theatrical presentation, while maintaining the show's anarchic spirit. The resulting film balanced crude humor with genuine musical sophistication, political satire with emotional storytelling, and boundary-pushing content with surprisingly traditional narrative structure. The production process demonstrated Parker and Stone's ambitions extending beyond television. They composed original songs throughout the film, drawing on Parker's musical theater background to create numbers that parodied Disney musicals while functioning as legitimate Broadway-style compositions. Blame Canada, Uncle Fucka, and What Would Brian Boitano Do became genuine musical hits, with Blame Canada earning an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. The Academy Award nomination represented remarkable mainstream acceptance for content that included explicit profanity, graphic violence, and sexual content throughout. Parker and Stone attended the ceremony with Trey wearing a dress similar to Jennifer Lopez's infamous Versace gown, making light of the formal event while also participating in traditional Hollywood celebration. The film lost to Phil Collins's You'll Be in My Heart from Tarzan, a defeat South Park later referenced through Collins's unflattering portrayals in subsequent episodes. The film's battle with the MPAA over its rating demonstrated the absurd standards governing American film classification. Parker and Stone submitted multiple cuts, with the ratings board repeatedly issuing NC-17 ratings that would have destroyed the film's commercial viability. The MPAA's objections centered on specific language and sexual references, with the board providing vague guidance about what needed changing. Parker and Stone responded by making cuts they considered arbitrary, replacing objectionable content with equally offensive material the MPAA somehow found acceptable. This ratings battle became documented in the film This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which used South Park's experience to illustrate MPAA's inconsistent standards and opaque processes. The eventual R rating came after numerous submissions and changes that Parker and Stone considered nonsensical. As material they viewed as equally offensive, received different treatment based on unpredictable MPAA reactions. The experience shaped their skepticism towards censorship and reinforced their commitment to testing boundaries. Bigger, Longer, and Uncut earned over $80 million worldwide against its $21 million budget, proving animated content for adult audiences could succeed commercially beyond television. The film's success validated South Park's cultural significance while demonstrating that theatrical films could expand rather than dilute the property's appeal. The positive critical reception, with 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, showed that reviewers recognized genuine craft and satirical sophistication beneath the crude presentation. The early video game adaptations represented South Park's worst transmedia failures. The South Park first-person shooter for Nintendo 64 and PlayStation, released in 1998, received overwhelmingly negative reviews for poor gameplay, dated graphics, even by 1998 standards, and failure to capture the show's humor. South Park Rally, a racing game released in 2000, fared slightly better but still disappointed, critically and commercially. Chef's Love Shack, a party game featuring mini-games and trivia, represented the nadir of early South Park gaming, with abysmal reviews citing broken gameplay and complete failure to justify its existence. These failures stemmed from Parker and Stone's lack of involvement in early game development. The creators licensed South Park to developers without maintaining creative control, resulting in products that used South Park characters and settings without understanding what made the show work. The games treated South Park as a simple license to exploit, rather than a property requiring genuine creative input to translate effectively to interactive media. The Stick of Truth marked a revolutionary change in South Park gaming and became one of the most successful licensed games ever created. Released in 2014 after years of troubled development, including publisher bankruptcy and acquisition by Ubisoft, the game succeeded by putting Parker and Stone directly in charge of creative decisions. The creators wrote the script, provided extensive voice acting, approved all visual designs, and insisted that gameplay serve the story rather than vice versa. Obsidian Entertainment's development brought legitimate RPG design expertise to complement Parker and Stone's creative control. The game utilized South Park's paper cutout aesthetic perfectly, creating a visual style identical to the television show through careful art direction. Characters moved with the same limited animation that defined the show, and environments captured South Park's established locations with remarkable accuracy. Players who knew the show intimately found themselves exploring spaces they'd seen in hundreds of episodes, now rendered as explorable game environments. The decision to make the player character a new kid moving to South Park solved the protagonist problem elegantly. Rather than forcing players to control Stan, Kyle, Cartman, or Kenny, the game created a customizable silent protagonist who could interact with established characters without contradicting their television personalities. This new kid became canonical within South Park's universe, with subsequent games and television episodes referencing the character's existence and adventures. The Stick of Truth's commercial and critical success validated Parker and Stone's approach to licensed gaming. The game sold over 5 million copies, received widespread critical acclaim with scores in the 80s on Metacritic, and won numerous awards for writing, adaptation, and comedy. Reviews praised how the game felt like playing an extended South Park episode, with humor, satire, and character development matching television quality. The success proved that licensed games could achieve critical respect when creators maintained proper creative control. South Park, The Fractured But Whole, continued the gaming success with a 2017 sequel focusing on superhero parodies. The game expanded on mechanics from Stick of Truth while incorporating South Park's Coon and Friends mythology developed across multiple television episodes. The superhero premise allowed for more elaborate combat systems, character customization, and satirical commentary on superhero media's dominance of popular culture. The Fractured But Whole generated controversy for tying game difficulty to the player character's skin color, with darker skin tones making the game harder through increased social challenges rather than combat difficulty. This meta-commentary on racial privilege in America sparked debate about whether the joke worked as satire or simply made players uncomfortable. Parker and Stone defended the choice as genuine commentary on systemic racism's impact on difficulty of navigating American society, though critics argued the implementation was clumsy. The sequel sold well, though not as spectacularly as Stick of Truth, suggesting that novelty of South Park games being good had worn off somewhat. However, the critical reception remained strong, with reviewers praising continued commitment to quality writing and faithful adaptation of the show's tone. The game cemented South Park's reputation for producing genuinely excellent video games rather than simple cash grab licenses. South Park Phone Destroyer launched as a mobile game in 2017, representing the franchise's attempt to capture mobile gaming revenue. The free-to-play card battle game featured characters from throughout South Park history engaging in real-time battles with tower defense elements. The game integrated South Park humor through character abilities, dialogue, and special events tied to current episodes. While monetization strategies faced criticism as exploitative, the game found audience and remained actively supported with regular updates. South Park Snow Day, released in 2024, marked a dramatic departure from previous games' 2D paper cutout style into full 3D animation. the cooperative multiplayer game focused on combat and exploration during a snow day that trapped South Park's residents. Initial reactions proved mixed, with some players appreciating the new visual approach, while others felt the 3D style lost the television show's distinctive aesthetic. Sales and critical reception fell below previous entries, suggesting that abandoning the paper cutout look damaged the game's appeal. The canonical status of South Park games created interesting questions about what constitutes official South Park storylines. Both Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole received references in subsequent television episodes, with characters acknowledging events from the games. This integration suggested Parker and Stone viewed the games as legitimate extensions of South Park's universe, rather than separate licensed products. However, the game's canonical status remained ambiguous, as later episodes sometimes contradicted game events without explanation. The Broadway musical The Book of Mormon, while not technically a South Park product, demonstrated Parker and Stone's creative range and influenced how they approached multimedia expansion. The musical's success, winning 9 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, proved their talents extended well beyond crude animation. The sophisticated musical composition and storytelling in Book of Mormon reflected back on South Park, making clear that the television show's crudeness represented deliberate creative choice rather than limited ability. South Park's expansion strategy distinguished itself through Parker and Stone's continued direct involvement across all major projects. Unlike many successful properties where creators become hands-off executives, Parker and Stone maintained creative control over films, games, and other media. This involvement meant slower output and fewer projects overall, but higher quality when products did release. The creators' willingness to cancel or delay projects rather than release subpar material protected South Park's brand integrity. The future of South Park's multimedia presence includes additional video games in development, though specific details remain scarce. Parker and Stone have indicated interest in exploring different gaming genres while maintaining the quality standards established by Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole. The success of those games demonstrated that interactive South Park content could match or exceed the television show's quality when properly executed. The transmedia expansion ultimately succeeded by recognizing that South Park's value lay in its creators' specific sensibilities, rather than simply its characters and setting. Early licensed products that lacked Parker and Stone's involvement failed because they treated South Park as generic content to exploit. Later products that maintained creative control succeeded because they understood that South Park's essence came from its creators' unique perspective and willingness to push boundaries across any medium. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut premiered 30th of June 1999, earning over $80 million worldwide and an Oscar nomination for Blame Canada after brutal MPAA battles resulted in eventual R rating, despite Parker and Stone considering changes arbitrary. Early video games, including 1998's first-person shooter, South Park, Rally, and Chef's Love Shack, received terrible reviews due to Parker and Stone's lack of creative involvement, treating South Park as simple license exploitation. The Stick of Truth revolutionized South Park gaming in 2014 through direct creator control, Obsidian Entertainment partnership, paper cutout visual style perfectly matching the show, and new kid protagonists becoming canonical within the universe, selling over 5 million copies with critical acclaim. The Fractured But Whole continued success in 2017 with superhero parody premise, though generated controversy, tying difficulty to player characters' skin color as systemic racism commentary. Phone Destroyer launched mobile gaming in 2017 as free-to-play card battler, while Snow Day's 2024 shift to full 3D animation received mixed reception, suggesting paper cutout aesthetic was crucial to games' appeal. Both major RPGs received television episode references, establishing games as canonical extensions rather than separate licensed products. This expansion succeeded by maintaining Parker and Stone's direct creative control across all major projects, refusing to release subpar material even when that meant fewer products. Overall, demonstrating South Park's value lay in creators' specific sensibilities rather than characters and setting alone. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to mountain music, montage of magic, and the surprisingly sophisticated sound of South Park. South Park's musical identity reveals unexpected sophistication beneath its crude animation and offensive content. From the haunting opening theme through elaborate original songs to the strategic use of montage sequences, the show's audio design creates emotional depth and satirical impact that visuals alone couldn't achieve. Trey Parker's musical theater background elevated South Park beyond typical animated comedy, enabling full musical episodes, Broadway-quality compositions, and songs that functioned as genuine social commentary. The acoustic guitar establishing shots, carefully selected licensed music, and original compositions combined to create South Park's distinctive sonic landscape. The opening theme established South Park's musical approach from the first episode. Primus, the alternative rock band known for their bass-heavy funk metal sound, performed the instrumental version of South Park Theme that played over the opening credits. The band's distinctive style, featuring Les Claypool's unconventional bass playing and quirky rhythms, matched South Park's outsider aesthetic perfectly. The collaboration happened because Parker and Stone were genuine Primus fans who specifically wanted the band's involvement rather than hiring generic composers. The theme's lyrics, performed by the main character's voice actors, introduced South Park's setting with deceptive innocence. The opening lines, "I'm going down to South Park, gonna have myself a time," suggested friendly small-town atmosphere before revealing darker elements. The lyrics' progression from cheerful anticipation through increasingly absurd descriptions captured how South Park presented itself as wholesome, before revealing dysfunction and chaos. The children's voices singing about humble folks without temptation contrasted ironically with the show's actual content depicting a town full of terrible people doing horrible things. The theme song evolved subtly across seasons as voice actors aged and recording quality improved. Early seasons featured noticeably younger-sounding voices as Kenny, Cartman, Stan, and Kyle's actors were actual children. Later seasons' theme retained the same melody and lyrics, but reflected the voice actors' maturation, creating an unintentional document of time's passage despite the characters remaining eternally 9 years old. These changes highlighted the tension between South Park's frozen timeline and the real-world aging of everyone involved in production. Chef's musical legacy represented one of South Park's most significant audio elements before Isaac Hayes' departure. Chef's soul and R&B songs, performed by Hayes with his legendary voice, brought genuine musical quality to episodes while serving satirical purposes. The songs followed a formula where Chef would offer life advice to the boys through music, with lyrics starting innocently before veering into explicit sexual content. This pattern parodied both children's educational programming and the sexual innuendo present in classic soul music. Chocolate Salty Balls became Chef's most commercially successful song, actually charting internationally and reaching #1 in the United Kingdom. The song's double entendre lyrics about confection, treats that were actually testicle references, demonstrated South Park's ability to create genuinely catchy music while maintaining crude humor. The commercial success validated Parker and Stone's musical instincts while proving that South Park songs could function independently of their satirical context. The Chef Aid album, released in 1998, featured South Park songs, performed by major artists including Ozzy Osbourne, Elton John, Meatloaf, DMX, and others. The album achieved gold certification, selling over 500,000 copies and proving that South Park had become culturally significant enough to attract major musical talent. The participating artists performed South Park songs seriously, treating the material with respect despite its crude content. This collaboration demonstrated that the music industry recognized genuine composition quality beneath the offensive lyrics. Trey Parker's musical theater background fundamentally shaped South Park's relationship with music. Parker studied music at the University of Colorado and composed scores for student productions before creating South Park. His training in musical theater composition meant he understood how songs could advance narrative, develop character, and create emotional impact beyond simple entertainment. This expertise elevated South Park's musical sequences from joke songs to legitimate theatrical compositions that happened to include profanity and crude humor. The influence of Parker's theatrical background appeared most obviously in full musical episodes. Elementary School Musical parodied High School Musical while functioning as a complete musical production with opening numbers, character songs, and ensemble finales. The songs genuinely worked as musical theater pieces with proper structure, melodic development, and theatrical staging adapted to animated format. The parody succeeded because Parker understood the conventions he was mocking, creating songs that worked both as satire and as legitimate musical compositions. The Book of Mormon's success on Broadway validated Parker and Stone's musical credentials beyond South Park. The musical won 9 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, with critics praising its sophisticated composition, clever lyrics, and emotional depth. The success proved that Parker's musical talent extended well beyond crude comedy songs, though Book of Mormon still featured South Park's signature willingness to offend religious sensibilities. The musical's achievement reflected back on South Park, making clear that the show's musical elements represented serious craft rather than happy accidents. Blame Canada, from Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, demonstrated Parker's ability to write songs that functioned on multiple levels simultaneously. The song worked as a legitimate Broadway show tune with proper structure and melodic development. It parodied the tendency to blame external influences for personal failings. It satirized parent activism and moral panic around entertainment. It created genuine emotional impact as characters expressed frustration through music. The Oscar nomination acknowledged that Blame Canada succeeded as composition regardless of its satirical content. The montage sequences throughout South Park's run showcased how music could advance narrative and create specific emotional tones. Aspen featured extended 1980s sports movie parody montages, complete with period-appropriate music, showing the boys learning to ski through classic training sequence tropes. These montages worked because Parker and Stone understood the conventions they parodied, recreating the emotional beats of genuine sports movie training sequences, while maintaining satirical distance through exaggeration and self-awareness. Team America, World Police, Parker and Stone's 2004 puppet film, included the song Montage that explicitly explained how montages work in film. The song's lyrics, "Show a lot of things happening at once, remind everyone of what's going on," described montage function while the visuals demonstrated the technique. This meta-commentary on filmmaking conventions reflected South Park's broader tendency to acknowledge and explain the entertainment techniques it employed, creating multiple layers of meaning through self-awareness. Make Love, Not Warcraft featured an extended gaming montage showing the boys' characters grinding experience points for weeks. The sequence used dramatic music typically associated with athletic training or military preparation, creating humor through the contrast between epic musical accompaniment and mundane, repetitive gaming activity. The montage compressed time while maintaining engagement through musical energy, demonstrating how proper music selection could make boring activities cinematically interesting. Original songs throughout South Park's run demonstrated remarkable range across musical genres. Kyle's Mom's a Bitch from the movie became iconic for its elaborate production and increasingly absurd accumulation of insults. Uncle Fucka functioned as legitimate vaudeville-style duet while consisting primarily of profanity. The Circle of Pooh parodied Circle of Life from The Lion King while celebrating Randy's enormous bowel movement. Each song demonstrated genuine musical craftsmanship applied to increasingly absurd content. Put It Down from season 21 showed South Park's ability to create genuinely affecting music around serious topics. The song, performed by Craig to comfort his anxious boyfriend, Tweak, addressed anxiety and nuclear war fears with surprising sincerity. While the episode maintained South Park's satirical edge, the song itself played relatively straight as a touching expression of support. The musical number worked emotionally while serving the satirical narrative, demonstrating how Parker's musical training enabled multiple tones within single episodes. Safe Space featured a full musical production number about social media echo chambers and the desire to avoid challenging content. The song's Broadway-style arrangement and Randy's earnest performance created satirical impact through contrast between serious musical presentation and ridiculous content. The production values matched legitimate musical theater, while the lyrics mocked contemporary social media culture, creating humor through the juxtaposition of high art and low subject matter. The acoustic guitar establishing shots created South Park's most distinctive recurring audio element. Nearly every scene transition featured brief acoustic guitar strums, often accompanied by visual shots of South Park's mountain landscape. These musical punctuation marks created rhythm and pacing while reinforcing the show's setting. The guitar's sound evoked both Western frontier imagery and folk music traditions, connecting South Park to American rural culture while also creating a gentle, almost nostalgic atmosphere that contrasted with the show's content. Sound design beyond music contributed significantly to South Park's identity. The constant mountain wind sound present in outdoor scenes created atmospheric sense of isolation and harsh climate. This subtle audio element reinforced that South Park existed in a remote mountain location rather than generic suburban America. The wind's presence reminded viewers of the setting's physical reality while also creating underlying unease through its persistence. The contrast between sophisticated musical composition and crude animation became one of South Park's signature aesthetic choices. Episodes featuring elaborate musical numbers with complex arrangements and professional production values were animated in the same deliberately simple style as regular episodes. This juxtaposition highlighted South Park's intentional choices around presentation, making clear that crude visuals represented deliberate aesthetic rather than limited budget or capability. Licensed music selections demonstrated careful curation rather than random choices. When South Park used existing songs, the selections typically served specific purposes beyond simple soundtrack filler. Living in the Sunlight by Tiny Tim and the Spirit of Christmas short established the show's quirky sensibility. Various licensed tracks in episodes reinforced satirical points, created specific emotional tones, or referenced particular cultural moments. The music supervision showed the same attention to detail present in other production aspects. The evolution of South Park's musical approach across 25 seasons reflected changing production capabilities and accumulated expertise. Early episodes featured simpler, original songs with less elaborate production values. As budgets increased and Parker refined his compositional skills, later seasons incorporated more complex musical arrangements, professional recording sessions with full orchestras, and increasingly ambitious musical sequences. This evolution demonstrated commitment to musical quality that exceeded typical animated comedy standards. South Park's musical sophistication ultimately served its satirical purposes by creating emotional depth that made satire more effective. Songs could make audiences feel genuine emotions before undercutting those feelings with satirical revelations. Musical sequences could create beauty and sentimentality that contrasted with crude content, highlighting hypocrisy or absurdity through juxtaposition. The music elevated South Park beyond simple crude comedy into genuinely affecting satire that worked on multiple emotional and intellectual levels simultaneously. Primus performed South Park's opening theme with distinctive bass-heavy funk metal, sound matching the show's outsider aesthetic, with lyrics sung by character voice actors evolving subtly as child actors aged despite characters remaining 9 years old. Chef's Isaac Hayes performed soul songs brought genuine musical quality, with Chocolate Salty Balls reaching #1 in the UK and the Chef Aid album going gold with performances by Ozzy Osbourne, Elton John, and other major artists. Trey Parker's musical theater training from University of Colorado enabled Broadway quality compositions throughout South Park, validated by the Book of Mormon, winning 9 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. Blame Canada from Bigger, Longer, and Uncut earned an Oscar nomination, functioning as a legitimate show tune while satirizing parental blame of external influences. Montage sequences in Aspen, Team America's explicit montage song explaining the technique, and Make Love Not Warcraft demonstrated understanding of filmmaking conventions. Original songs ranged from Kyle's Mom's A Bitch, elaborate insult accumulation through put it down, touching anxiety comfort to safe space, Broadway-style social media satire. Acoustic guitar establishing shots created distinctive audio transitions, reinforcing mountain setting, while wind sound effects created atmospheric isolation contrasting with sophisticated musical production values. This musical sophistication served satirical purposes by creating emotional depth, making satire more effective, with songs generating genuine feelings before undercutting them through satirical revelations or creating beauty, contrasting with crude content. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to canon versus conspiracy, separating confirmed facts from fan theories about South Park's hidden meanings. Distinguishing South Park's confirmed canon from popular fan theories requires careful examination of creator statements, episode evidence, and the difference between intentional storytelling and audience speculation. While many fan theories about the show contain creative interpretations worth considering, others misattribute meaning to coincidental details or mistake satirical choices for hidden messages. Understanding what Parker and Stone actually intended versus what fans have imagined reveals how South Park functions as satirical commentary rather than elaborate puzzle box requiring decoding. The most significant confirmed creator intention involves the relationship between Stan and Kyle as representations of Trey Parker and Matt Stone themselves. Both creators have stated explicitly and repeatedly that Stan Marsh functions as Parker's proxy while Kyle Broflovsky represents Stone. This wasn't subtle or hidden, with Parker voicing Stan and Stone voicing Kyle, making the connection obvious from the show's premise. Episodes exploring Stan and Kyle's friendship directly reflected Parker and Stone's real creative partnership, including conflicts, reconciliations, and the fundamental bond that sustained both relationships. Stan's character traits mirror Parker's background and personality. Stan's father, Randy Marsh, is based on Parker's actual father, a geologist, with Randy's occupation and personality reflecting that inspiration. Stan's perspective as the show's nominal protagonist positions him as the audience identification character who reacts to South Park's chaos with confusion and growing cynicism. This role reflected Parker's position as primary creative force exploring American culture through satirical lens, using Stan as his vehicle for commentary. Kyle's role as Stan's Jewish best friend reflected Stone's relationship with Parker, with Kyle frequently serving as the moral center who delivers episode-ending speeches about lessons learned. The character's Jewish identity came directly from Stone's heritage, with Kyle's experiences dealing with Cartman's anti-Semitism, reflecting real-world Jewish experiences of casual prejudice. Stone's influence on the show's satirical targets and moral positions often came through Kyle's arguments and perspective. Cartman's characterization as actual psychopath has been confirmed by Parker and Stone across multiple interviews. The creators deliberately wrote Cartman as someone with genuine antisocial personality disorder rather than simply a badly behaved child. This characterization explained why Cartman showed no remorse for horrific actions, felt no empathy for victims, and consistently escalated his behavior beyond what even bratty children would attempt. Episodes like Scott Tenorman Must Die, where Cartman feeds a teenager chili made from his parents' bodies, demonstrated psychopathy rather than typical childhood cruelty. The confirmation of Cartman's psychopathy resolved debates about whether his character represented satire of spoiled children or something darker. Parker and Stone intended both readings, using Cartman to satirize permissive parenting while also creating a genuinely dangerous character whose behavior exceeded satirical exaggeration. This dual function allowed Cartman to work as comedy while also generating genuine discomfort about how far the character would go. Kenny's poverty and family dysfunction has been explicitly confirmed as intentional commentary on economic inequality and its impact on children. The McCormick family's methamphetamine addiction isn't subtle subtext, but directly stated and shown across multiple episodes. Parker and Stone grew up around poverty and addiction in Colorado, incorporating those observations into Kenny's characterization. The show treats Kenny's circumstances as both comedy and tragedy, acknowledging that poverty kills children through inadequate safety measures and lack of access to resources. The Mysterian trilogy provided canonical explanation for Kenny's immortality through his parents' Cthulhu cult membership. This storyline, appearing in seasons 14 to 15, represented Parker and Stone's decision to finally explain Kenny's deaths after 14 years of treating them as unexplained running gag. The explanation worked because it acknowledged Kenny's resurrections as actual plot element requiring justification rather than simple cartoon logic. The trilogy also explored Kenny's psychological trauma from dying repeatedly, treating his situation with surprising seriousness. However, speculation about whether Kenny's poverty causes his deaths represents fan theory rather than confirmed intent. While the connection seems obvious, Parker and Stone have never explicitly stated that poverty causes Kenny's deaths, and many of his deaths occur through freak accidents unrelated to economic circumstances. The theory works interpretively, but shouldn't be presented as confirmed creator intention. The Cartman has multiple fathers theory misunderstands how Scott Tenorman's father, being Jack Tenorman, who was also Cartman's father, works within the show's canon. The season 14 episode 201 revealed that Jack Tenorman, a Denver Broncos player, fathered both Scott and Eric Cartman, making them half-brothers. This revelation explained Cartman's psychological breakdown in Scott Tenorman Must Die, where he fed Scott chili made from Jack Tenorman's body, meaning Cartman had unknowingly killed his own father and fed him to his half-brother. This explanation represents confirmed canon directly stated in the episode rather than fan speculation. However, various elaborate theories about Cartman being a time traveler or Cartman representing evil incarnate beyond human psychopathy lack any creator confirmation. These interpretations extend beyond what the show actually presents, mistaking satirical extremism for supernatural or science fiction elements. While creative readings, they shouldn't be treated as canon without explicit episode support or creator confirmation. The characters are imaginary theory represents complete misunderstanding of South Park's narrative approach. Some fans have theorized that events in South Park exist entirely within the boys' imaginations, with the show representing elaborate pretend games rather than actual occurrences. This theory misinterprets episodes like Imagination Land and other storylines featuring imagination as themes, mistaking satirical commentary about the power of fiction for meta-commentary about South Park's own reality. Parker and Stone have never suggested this interpretation, and the show's internal logic contradicts it. Episodes feature adult storylines independent of the children's awareness, events have lasting consequences across seasons, and the show treats its universe as literally real within its own fiction. The imagination theory represents the kind of "it was all a dream" speculation that audiences apply to many shows without textual support. The pandemic special and subsequent COVID-related episodes created genuine ambiguity about canonical status. The specials aged characters in real time, showing them as adults in flash-forwards that broke South Park's eternal childhood. Parker and Stone haven't definitively stated whether these aging sequences represent permanent changes or exist in separate continuity. The return to traditional format in subsequent episodes suggests the flash-forwards exist in alternative timeline, but official confirmation hasn't been provided. The ambiguity around COVID specials' canonical status reflects South Park's broader, flexible approach to continuity. Parker and Stone maintain freedom to treat specific episodes as permanent, canon or isolated storylines based on future creative needs. This flexibility prevents them from being locked into specific character developments or plot points that might limit future storytelling options. Fan theories about South Park predicting future events mistake satire for prophecy. The show has coincidentally addressed topics shortly before similar real-world events occurred, leading fans to claim prescient insight. However, South Park's rapid production schedule means most supposedly predictive episodes actually addressed issues already present in cultural discourse. The show responds to existing trends rather than creating predictions, though occasionally timing makes episodes seem prophetic. The supposed rivalry between South Park and The Simpsons represents fan creation rather than genuine feud. While both shows occasionally reference each other, Parker and Stone have expressed admiration for The Simpsons' influence and longevity. References to The Simpsons in South Park episodes work as comedic devices rather than genuine attacks. The rivalry exists primarily in fan discussions comparing the shows rather than in actual animosity between creators. Secret meanings supposedly hidden in the opening sequence represent fan overinterpretation of simple visual choices. Various theories claim that specific background elements, character positions, or visual details contain hidden messages about the show's themes or future storylines. However, the opening sequence has remained largely unchanged for practical rather than symbolic reasons, with modifications reflecting technical improvements rather than encoded meanings. Hidden messages fans claim exist in episodes typically result from confirmation bias rather than intentional inclusion. Audiences seeking deeper meaning can find patterns in any creative work, but finding patterns doesn't prove intentional design. While South Park certainly contains deliberate satire and commentary, not every detail carries symbolic weight. Parker and Stone work within television production time constraints that preclude elaborate hidden message encoding. The distinction between interpretation and canon matters because conflating the two misrepresents how South Park actually works. The show succeeds through direct satirical commentary rather than elaborate puzzles requiring fan decoding. Parker and Stone state their positions explicitly through character dialogue and storyline choices, leaving little room for hidden meanings. Audiences can still develop creative interpretations, but those readings represent individual response rather than authorial intent. Distinguishing confirmed facts from speculation requires examining multiple sources. Creator interviews, DVD commentaries, and official statements provide reliable evidence for intentional choices. Episode content offers textual support when interpreted carefully. However, fan theories on forums and social media often lack supporting evidence beyond creative speculation. Treating speculation as confirmed canon spreads misinformation and misrepresents the creator's actual work. Stan and Kyle represent Trey Parker and Matt Stone, respectively, confirmed explicitly across multiple creator interviews, with Parker voicing Stan and Stone voicing Kyle. Cartman's psychopathy has been confirmed by creators as genuine antisocial personality disorder, rather than simple bad behavior, explaining his lack of remorse and escalating cruelty. Kenny's family poverty and meth addiction represents intentional commentary on economic inequality's impact on children, with the Mysterian trilogy providing canonical explanation for his immortality through parents' Cthulhu cult membership. Scott Tenorman's father, Jack Tenorman, being revealed as Cartman's father in 201, confirmed they're half-brothers, meaning Cartman unknowingly killed his own father in Scott Tenorman Must Die. However, theories about characters being imaginary completely misunderstand the show's narrative approach, with Parker and Stone never suggesting this interpretation despite fan claims. The COVID specials created genuine canonical ambiguity around whether character aging represents permanent change or separate continuity, with creators not providing definitive statements. Claims about South Park predicting events mistake satirical response to existing cultural trends for prophecy, while supposed Simpsons rivalry represents fan creation rather than genuine feud between creators. Secret meanings, fans claim in opening sequence, or hidden messages in episodes typically result from overinterpretation rather than intentional design, as Parker and Stone's direct satirical approach leaves a little room for elaborate encoded puzzles requiring decoding. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the cozy phenomenon, why South Park works as background content for sleep despite its chaos. The unexpected phenomenon of South Park functioning as comfort viewing and sleep content reveals surprising qualities beneath its offensive surface. Despite featuring crude humor, graphic violence, and controversial satire, the show has become popular ambient television for fans seeking relaxation and background noise. This paradox emerges from genuine warmth created by Parker and Stone's friendship, the cozy, small-town setting despite chaotic content, consistent structure providing psychological comfort, and the acoustic guitar establishing shots creating peaceful atmosphere. Understanding why intentionally offensive content functions as soothing background, viewing illuminates how comfort emerges from familiarity and authentic creative relationships rather than purely from pleasant subject matter. The friendship between Trey Parker and Matt Stone fundamentally shapes South Park's underlying warmth. The two creators have collaborated for over 30 years, maintaining creative partnerships since meeting at University of Colorado in 1992. Their genuine affection for each other and shared sense of humor permeates every aspect of South Park, creating authenticity that audiences sense even when episodes address dark topics. The show emerged from real friendship rather than corporate development, giving it emotional foundation that survives offensive content. This authentic creative relationship manifests through Stan and Kyle's friendship, which directly reflects Parker and Stone's partnership. Episodes exploring their bond, conflicts, and reconciliations draw from real experiences and emotions. When Stan and Kyle fight, make up, or support each other through difficulties, these moments reflect actual relationship dynamics between the creators. This genuine emotional core provides warmth that contrasts with and ultimately overpowers the show's crudest elements. Parker and Stone's collaborative process involves constant conversation and joint decision-making rather than divided responsibilities. They write together, make creative choices together, and maintain equal partnership in all aspects of production. This collaborative approach means South Park reflects shared perspective rather than individual vision, creating work that feels more generous and less singular than many auteur-driven shows. The generosity emerging from collaboration contributes to the show's unexpected warmth. The small-town setting provides comfort through familiarity, despite the chaos occurring within it. South Park functions as idealized small community where everyone knows everyone else, creating sense of interconnection rarely seen in modern urban or suburban life. The recurring locations like the bus stop, Stark's Pond, and various businesses create geographic stability. Characters encounter the same neighbors repeatedly, building relationships across hundreds of episodes. This consistency creates psychological sense of place that feels comforting, even when individual storylines address disturbing topics. The town's isolation in Colorado mountains contributes to its cozy atmosphere. The surrounding peaks create physical boundaries that make South Park feel protected and separate from the larger world. While episodes regularly address national and international issues, the town itself remains a distinct location with its own identity. This geographic isolation creates a sense of safe space where viewers can observe chaos without being personally threatened by it. The recurring character cast functions like extended family or community that viewers come to know intimately. After 25 seasons, audiences understand these characters' personalities, relationships, and typical behaviors. This deep familiarity creates comfort similar to spending time with old friends. Even when characters do terrible things, viewers understand their motivations and patterns, creating predictability that paradoxically makes offensive content feel safer. The bus stop meetings that open many episodes create ritualistic comfort through repetition. The four boys gathering at the same location to discuss whatever topic will drive that episode's story becomes a familiar pattern that viewers anticipate. This ritual provides structural comfort, signaling that despite whatever chaos follows, the episode begins from a stable foundation of friendship and routine. The bus stop functions as anchor points, suggesting that no matter what happens, the core relationships persist. The acoustic guitar establishing shots create South Park's most direct contribution to its sleep content appeal. The brief guitar strums accompanying scene transitions create rhythmic pacing while reinforcing the mountain setting's peaceful qualities. The guitar's gentle sound contrasts with the often chaotic dialogue and action, providing moments of calm throughout episodes. These musical punctuation marks function almost like meditation bells, creating breathing room between scenes that allows viewers to relax. The acoustic guitar's specific sound evokes both Western frontier imagery and folk music traditions, connecting South Park to American rural culture while creating nostalgic atmosphere. The simplicity of acoustic guitar versus electric instruments or complex orchestration reinforces the show's visual simplicity. The guitar strums become so frequent across episodes that they create consistent audio environment viewers associate with South Park, triggering comfort responses through sheer familiarity. The wind sound effects accompanying outdoor scenes contribute to atmospheric comfort. The persistent mountain wind creates white noise effect that actually aids sleep and relaxation. This subtle audio element works subliminally, creating sense of place while also functioning as ambient sound that masks other noises and creates consistent audio environment. The wind's presence reinforces isolation and separation from urban chaos, suggesting viewers have retreated to remote mountain location, safe from external stresses. The structural predictability of South Park episodes creates psychological comfort through reliable patterns. Most episodes follow consistent three-act structure: setup introducing the problem, escalation as situation worsens, and resolution typically involving character learning something. While specific content varies wildly, this underlying structure remains remarkably consistent across hundreds of episodes. Viewers can rely on narrative patterns even when specific plots surprise them. The "I learned something today" resolution formula became a recurring element that provides satisfying closure. Characters, usually Stan or Kyle, deliver speeches summarizing lessons learned from that episode's events. These speeches acknowledge themes and provide explicit moral framing, creating sense of completion. While the lessons themselves often satirize obvious moralizing, the structural function of providing clear endings creates comfort through closure. Viewers know episodes will resolve their conflicts and provide thematic summaries, creating predictable emotional arc. The cold open format that begins many episodes creates another structural pattern viewers can anticipate. Episodes often start with brief scene establishing the episode's premise before the opening credits, then resume the story after the theme song. This pattern becomes so consistent that viewers unconsciously expect and rely on it, creating comfort through structural familiarity. The cold open signals that viewers know how South Park episodes work, reducing cognitive load and allowing more passive viewing. The sheer volume of South Park content contributes significantly to its sleep content appeal. With over 300 episodes across 26 seasons, fans who've watched the entire series multiple times have accumulated hundreds of hours of familiar content. This extensive library means viewers can put on South Park knowing they've likely seen the episodes before, reducing need for active attention while providing comforting familiarity. The repetition creates similar comfort to rewatching favorite films or rereading beloved books. The 6-day production schedule's impact on South Park's topical content creates interesting relationship with time that enhances its sleep content appeal. Episodes addressing specific current events become historical documents that lose their immediate urgency while maintaining their entertainment value. Watching older South Park episodes provides nostalgic comfort, reminding viewers of previous cultural moments while allowing them to observe how issues evolved. This temporal distance transforms potentially stressful contemporary commentary into more abstract reflection on recent history. The crude animation style paradoxically contributes to comfort through its simplicity. The paper cutout aesthetic and limited animation means visual information remains relatively simple and consistent. This visual simplicity requires less cognitive processing than more detailed animation, allowing viewers to follow stories without intense focus. The consistent art style across decades means episodes from different seasons feel visually similar, creating seamless experience when watching multiple episodes consecutively. The character voices remain remarkably consistent across South Park's run, with Parker and Stone providing most of the main voices throughout the series. This consistency means viewers develop deep familiarity with how characters sound, creating comfort through vocal recognition. The voices become like old friends speaking, triggering relaxation responses through familiarity. Even the characters' speech patterns and verbal tics become soothing through repetition, with viewers able to predict how characters will deliver lines. The show's approach to controversial content actually enhances, rather than diminishes, its comfort value for longtime fans. The offensive content becomes familiar and therefore less shocking with repeated exposure. Viewers who initially found South Park's crudeness challenging develop tolerance and even appreciation through continued watching. The show's boundaries become known quantities, creating comfort through understanding where South Park will and won't go. This familiarity with the show's transgressive nature paradoxically makes it feel safer than unknown content. The explicit profanity serves rhythmic function that contributes to South Park's audio landscape. The regular deployment of curse words creates verbal patterns viewers come to expect and find comforting through familiarity. The profanity's integration into dialogue becomes less about shock value and more about established character voices, with viewers understanding that Cartman's constant swearing simply represents how that character speaks. This linguistic familiarity creates comfort similar to regional accents or family speech patterns. The show's satirical targets rotate regularly enough that no single episode's content feels personally threatening to most viewers. South Park mocks everyone equally across its run, meaning viewers can enjoy episodes where the satire targets groups or beliefs they don't personally identify with. This distributes offensive content across such broad spectrum that most individual episodes feel relatively safe for any given viewer. The equal opportunity offense creates paradoxical comfort through its fairness. The 6-day production schedule that allows topical content also means episodes rarely feel dated despite addressing specific events. South Park's approach to current events focuses on underlying patterns and behaviors rather than just surface details, allowing episodes to maintain relevance even years later. This timeless quality, despite topical content, means episodes remain entertaining and comforting long after their original air dates, building the extensive library that enables extended viewing sessions. The community of South Park fans who use the show as sleep content creates social validation for this viewing practice. Online discussions, social media posts, and comment sections on streaming platforms regularly feature viewers sharing their use of South Park as background noise or sleep aid. This collective practice normalizes what might otherwise seem like odd viewing behavior, creating comfort through shared experience. Viewers realize they're part of community using South Park this way, enhancing the comfort through social connection. South Park works as sleep content because Parker and Stone's 30-year friendship creates genuine warmth beneath crude satire, with Stan and Kyle's relationship directly reflecting the creator's real bond. The small-town Colorado mountain setting provides geographic isolation, creating psychological sense of safe space where everyone knows everyone despite chaos. Acoustic guitar establishing shots and persistent wind sound effects create rhythmic, peaceful audio environment functioning as white noise, while the guitar's folk music associations evoke nostalgic comfort. Structural predictability through consistent 3-act format. I learned something today. Resolution speeches and cold open patterns creates reliable narrative arcs requiring minimal active attention. Over 300 episodes across 26 seasons provide extensive familiar content library, allowing viewers to re-watch known episodes, reducing cognitive load. The crude animation's visual simplicity requires less processing than detailed animation, while Parker and Stone's consistent character voices create deep familiarity, triggering relaxation through vocal recognition. Controversial content becomes familiar and less shocking through repeated exposure, with South Park's known boundaries creating comfort through understanding where the show will go. The equal opportunity offense distributing satire broadly means individual episodes feel relatively safe for any given viewer, while the 6-day production schedule creates topical yet timeless episodes, maintaining relevance years later. The community of fans using South Park as sleep content provides social validation, normalizing this viewing practice, creating comfort through shared experience where thousands acknowledge using offensive, crude cartoon as soothing bedtime companion.